You're on 3.
They've done it. The South Carolina Lady Gamecocks have won yet another national championship in college basketball. Outstanding job to go wire to wire for Dawn Staley and the crew. Replaced 5 starters. Didn't phase them one bit. They go out there and they win titles. It's what they do. Congratulations to Dawn Staley and the South Carolina Lady Gamecocks. To all you Gamecock fans, crow about it as much as you want to today. Gloat about it. We give you full permission to throw it in your Clemson Tiger friends' faces. What a game.
What a weekend, man.
What a game. What a weekend. Cole, you were on the road at Clemson's spring game. We're going to get a full breakdown on that later on in the show. This is Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. I'm Diesel. He is Cole Bryson. And you are you Tolos. You are a big part of this show. So throughout the show, anytime you want to text in, you can do so. 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. If you're texting in on topic, we will always get to your texts immediately. If you're texting in off topic, well, we'll get to it eventually. That's kind of how we operate.
But that's the best way to do it, man. And we are super, super excited. I absolutely, Diesel, love days like today. I don't know if our Tolos are on Twitter or not. If they're not, they should be. But I tweeted out something this morning and tagged you in it. And I said, look, a weekend like this past weekend, Diesel, writes mine and your show for you.
Yeah.
We didn't have to do a ton of digging for content today, right? It was absolutely an incredible sports weekend. So much fun, so much to get to. And on this national championship segment, don't worry, we're going to get back to it because there is a ton to unpack. But Diesel, talking about this game, I was so shocked on how Iowa came out of the gate.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit worried, obviously pulling for the Gamecocks yesterday and pulling for Dawn Staley. We'll get into the game, but the way that game started, man, when I don't know what your reaction was, but I was sitting there thinking, oh no, because for a few minutes, it did not look good.
No, and I mean, we got Z-Fink 2831 on the stream right now, says Iowa had the best player, the Gamecocks had the best team. And that is just absolutely true. That is absolutely true. The scoring off of South Carolina's bench alone proves that. I mean, Iowa is essentially a one-woman show.
Yep.
No disrespect to Gabby Marshall. No disrespect to her other teammates, but it is the Caitlin Clark show and everyone else.
It is. You know what, though? I was disappointed, man, and I don't know if you agree or disagree with this. We hadn't talked about it, and I think that's great because we're going to give our opinions right now for the first time. I was so disappointed with the announcing and the officiating. I mean, it was like Caitlin Clark has to win this thing. I mean, if Caitlin Clark doesn't win this thing, Diesel, the world's coming to an end.
We see it so many times. The play-by-play crew will have a narrative in their minds that they are just trying to will into existence. And it didn't happen. They wanted so badly to see Caitlin Clark ride off into the sunset with the national championship trophy, and they didn't get their way, which makes it even sweeter.
It does. Yeah. It does. What a win for South Carolina. I have so many thoughts from that game, but I'll tell you this. I think when you look back at that ball game yesterday, Diesel, there were several things that jumped off the page. Number one, you said it first, and I'm glad you pointed it out. South Carolina's bench points. Yeah. Oh, my word. The streamer who said Iowa had the best player, Gamecocks had the best team, you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly right. I agree 100%. 51 rebounds yesterday by South Carolina compared to just 29 for Iowa. 48 paint points for the Gamecocks. I did get frustrated at times, Diesel, watching that game, thinking, quit jacking up threes. Quit shooting threes. I was literally yelling. I was at a restaurant, at an establishment, trying not to get thrown out because they kept shooting threes. I just wanted them to feed it inside to Cordosa and the rest of those girls, and that's what they eventually did. But I'll start with this. How incredible was Raven Johnson yesterday guarding Caitlin Clark? In the first quarter, Bree Hall was on Caitlin Clark, right? Caitlin Clark had a first quarter record of 18 points. Iowa jumped out to a double-digit lead. Things kind of looked squirrely for the Gamecocks. But in the second quarter, Coach Don Staley switched Raven Johnson, onto Caitlin Clark. From there, Diesel, the game changed the rest of the way with Johnson as the primary defender on Caitlin Clark. Clark made 5 of 20 shots with 12 points. She also had 4 turnovers. Raven Johnson, they're celebrating right now in Colonial Life as the team is, I believe, just got back about an hour ago. That place, I saw a video on Twitter, is absolutely packed. Raven Johnson, she was the best player defensively yesterday, and I couldn't be more excited to see how they locked up Caitlin Clark when Raven Johnson switched to her, because she was their difference maker in that game.
It feels odd saying they locked her up. I mean, Caitlin Clark only scored 30 points in the game.
Yeah.
She only had a massive performance. Yeah, the first quarter was really where it was all at. And
18.
Wesley Roberts here said something that I texted you during the game.
Sure.
During that third quarter, said it was tough to watch Caitlin Clark pass dimes down the court and they miss a layup over and over. There was a point, Cole, midway through that third quarter, when South Carolina was starting to pull away. Like, you know, they'd hit a couple shots in a row. Iowa couldn't score. There was one time, and I am not positive. I think it was Ashlyn Watkins when she scored a bucket midway through the third quarter, and then she, to use a Bull Durham term, lollygagged down the court.
Sure.
She was talking trash to whoever. I don't know what she was looking at. Was she looking at the camera, the bench? I don't know. But she was sort of jogging back down the court, talking trash, and she got beat. She got burnt on an outlet pass. Iowa missed the layup. Same thing happened again, like 3 plays later, and Iowa was just missing shots that they should have been making, and that's what puts the game out of reach.
It does.
They had the ability, of course, and the skill to stick with South Carolina, but you have to hit every single bucket, every single good look you've got. You have to hit to have a chance to stay with South Carolina, as we are now, Cole, just a minute or two away from the totality of this.
Let's go.
Of this eclipse that's going on outside. 82%, I think, is our total number of eclipse. And it's kind of weird. It's kind of eerie in the studio in general anyway, because we have this really dark film on the outside of the window. So it's always a little bit darker in here just looking out, but it's starting to look really odd. And I remember in 2017 when we got the full gamut of the eclipse, Cole, I just remember how eerie and quiet it felt. Part of it, I'm sure, is like a lot of people are pulling over somewhere to look at the eclipse, but it's like the wind just stops. Like I walked out
nature
there a while
too.
ago, and birds stopped chirping, cows stopped mooing in the fields, and it's just like it's an odd and surreal and creepy fun thing. Let's get to that phone call there, Cole. But yeah, just a fantastic performance there from South Carolina. Won their second national championship in 3 years. We talked about it. 37 points off the bench for the South Carolina Gamecocks in that game. And that's the difference maker. When you can sub people in and they just keep scoring, that's just an absolutely fantastic thing. And that's just an embarrassment of riches that Dawn Staley had.
Without a doubt. And going off of what we talked about with Raven Johnson, she was spectacular. I also thought that Tessa Johnson yesterday was incredible. Coming into the game, Tessa Johnson off the bench was averaging 6.6 points per game. Yesterday, she had 19 points against Iowa. You said it earlier. I said it again, reiterated. South Carolina's bench made the difference. And then lastly, Camila Cardoso was big time yesterday. 17 rebounds, 15 points. She was absolutely phenomenal in the paint for South Carolina, and she was able to eliminate second chance opportunities. I don't remember Iowa getting a ton of second chance opportunities yesterday in that ball game. South Carolina did an exceptional job on the boards, and Cardoso is one of the best players, Diesel, that I have ever seen in college basketball at the women's level. And she's not a Caitlin Clark, but her size, it's just unmatched. You cannot do anything about it. And that's what makes her so fun to watch. She's incredible.
Yeah. Camila Cardoso is 6'9",
something like
10,
that.
Something like that. And she's going up against players who are 6 foot even.
Sure.
5'10", 5'11", 6 foot even. Texter here calls me out. He says, I love that the only other player on Iowa we can name is Gabby Marshall. Yeah, it's because Gabby Marshall's the hot one. Let's be real. We all know why we know Gabby Marshall's name, because she's the hot one. Yeah, I mean, Kate Martin, she was fantastic in that game. Sydney, Afolter, I think is how you say her last name. I don't know how you say her last name, but she was fantastic in that game as well. Just a great performance all around for South Carolina. And it's great to see the moment finally catch up with Dawn. We had a fantastic conversation with her last week, which if you want to go back and listen to that, and especially it's fun to go back and listen to an interview like that in the context now that they've just won a national championship. And some of the questions that we had for her regarding, how do you keep this team centered and focused, especially when a team makes a run back on you, which Iowa did.
They did.
In the fourth quarter of that game. They made it really, really interesting. I think it's definitely worth going back and listening to that Dawn Staley interview. But I had the sense that Iowa just burnt a lot of energy midway through the fourth quarter to mount that comeback. They just didn't have enough. They weren't getting lucky, hitting the shots that they needed to hit to push past South Carolina. Had they done that, I think this could have been a game that came down to the wire. But when you get 37 points off the bench, it looked like South Carolina was just cruising through the majority of that fourth quarter. They were taking their time. They weren't taking shots until late in the shot clock. Anybody they subbed in could go out there and score baskets on any possession. There were no liability. Like, there's no role players on that team. Everyone can score. And I thought that was just fantastic to watch.
Diesel has some audio we'll get to in a moment, but I want to let you know you can get your thoughts in on last night's or yesterday's national championship game. 844 fan phone. The phone lines are open, Gamecock fans. 844-326-3663. Text line open as well, 71307. Start your text with the word fan. I saw several tweets, and I'm going to continue to look on Twitter throughout this first segment of the show, the first hour, if you will. South Carolina women's, they arrived back at Colonial Life not long ago. That place, if you have not seen it, I have retweeted several tweets. I'm on Twitter at @TheColeBryson. Diesel is at Diesel on Radio. That place right now, as we speak, is electric. It is unbelievable, the atmosphere right now in Colonial Life Arena. As the Lady Gamecocks are there, they're getting a huge celebration from the public, from the students, the Gamecock men. Lamont Paris, his staff is there. It's just it's on one of those feelings that gives you goosebumps, even if you're not a South Carolina women's basketball fan, because they were just so sensational. And when we look back, Diesel, at this national championship, and I thought it was interesting what Dawn said after the game regarding this one being special. When we look back, I believe we will say that this one was Dawn's most impressive of the three, because she did not have – I asked her on this station, at what point did she realize this was a Final Four team? And she said to me and you when we flew down into Albany. And she didn't – honestly, she did not think this team was a Final Four team, and I love that honesty. They had to replace 5 new starters. I think this was her best yet.
Yeah, I think you could look at this team, and you know the talent that you have on the team, and you could say, okay, well, this is a Sweet 16 type team. We get to the Sweet 16, and I mean, hey, that was very, very close to being the truth. You look back at the games that South Carolina had to win to get to this point, and they were right there against Indiana. They were right there against Oregon State. Almost gave up leads, but they found the ways to win when it really mattered. Here's that audio that you're talking about here. Post-game, Dawn Staley had some words about Caitlin Clark and what she has meant to the game. And, it speaks to, number one, the quality of Dawn Staley and what she knows, what she witnessed with a player like Caitlin Clark. And I think it's just fantastic for her to take the time out of her celebration to make these comments.
I want to personally thank Caitlin Clark for lifting up our sport. She carried a heavy load for our sport, and it just is not going to stop here on the collegiate tour. But when she is the number 1 pick in the WNBA draft, she's gonna lift that league up.
That was classy.
Yeah,
that was really classy, man. I love that. I respect that, because she could have went on. She didn't have to. You're exactly right.
Spent 20 minutes talking about how great we are and how our culture means everything.
Sure.
She could have turned that entire thing into a commercial for South Carolina when it comes to recruiting.
Right.
Not that they need any more juice when it comes to recruiting. But Caitlin Clark was asked about those comments in her post-game interview.
All right.
And
I have not heard this yet.
Fantastic comments about what Dawn had to say.
Anytime somebody like Coach Staley is able to recognize you and what you did for the game is pretty special. And obviously she's somebody I, respect so much. I respect what she's done for South Carolina. I respect what she did as a player for our game. And, anytime you can get the praises of her is pretty special. So it means a lot.
That's special, man. Like, Dawn recognizes that something we'll talk about later in the show, that this game is at the top.
What it represents
Sure.
for the game of women's basketball.
Sure.
And I think Dawn is smart enough to know that as big as this game was, which I think the peak viewership I saw was 17 million. The average viewership was right around 14.2.
God, that's
which is what
insane.
they count. They count the average viewership for the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think she knows that, this is fantastic for the game, but this may be the pinnacle of the game unless we continue this going forward.
Could be.
It'll be a great footnote. It'll be a great conversation piece going forward. Like, hey, wasn't it great in 2024 when we had 14.5 million people watching a game? Well, now we're back down to about 7 or 8.
Sure.
And man, that was great back then.
Well,
but Dawn knows that you've got to keep this going. So it meant a lot for her to recognize that.
When I look back, and I've talked to 3 or 4 people already this morning, a couple of them South Carolina fans, Diesel, the overwhelming majority of comments that I've heard today is that as great as Caitlin Clark is, and I may get a little pushback from this, but I believe it. As good as Caitlin Clark is, she's at the top. She's the best I've ever seen shooting the basketball in the women's game. She's the best I've ever seen. However, championships matter, man. And the
Can't
fact
do it by yourself.
You're right. You cannot do it by yourself. And she, as great as she was, the fact that she has left women's college basketball as of today without a championship, that's shocking. That is shocking.
It is. And you said it earlier. The narrative, they tried to get to that narrative. They wanted that narrative so bad that she rides out on a horse in the sunset with a trophy under her arm, but that's not what they got in South Carolina. You earned every bit of it. You absolutely dominated that basketball game for most of the game. Cole, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
This marks the 10th undefeated national championship in women's college basketball. So it's happened 10 times. 10 times.
Wow.
This has happened. Now, we juxtapose that with the figure in the men's game. It's only happened 7 times in the men's game, and it hasn't happened since 1976. I think what we're seeing here, we can look at it and say that achieving an undefeated team in men's college basketball is damn near impossible anymore. A 2, 3, 4 loss team is kind of right in that sweet spot of the best of the best. But I don't know that we'll ever see it again in a men's team. And I think we're going to start seeing it less and less and less in the women's team as we start achieving parity.
Yeah.
We start having, I mean, who knows what'll happen when Gino Auriemma retires? Who knows what'll happen, when Iowa's coach retires, when Kim Mulkey retires? But hopefully we can keep this 3, 4, 5, 6 programs at the hyper elite level that can go at each other, because that branding matters.
It does.
And having schools like UConn, South Carolina, Iowa, LSU in it each and every year, that's what's going to raise the profile of this sport. We talked about it a lot over the past week about the coverage of women's college basketball and how it's been so much about the coverage has been about the coverage in a weird way. Well, it's time now to start focusing that coverage in on the elite play of individual players.
Well, this was the atmosphere. This is some audio. This was the atmosphere less than 1 hour ago at Colonial Life as the students and the entire lower bowl, I don't see the upper deck, but the entire lower bowl was slammed packed. It is loud. They're swag surfing. And the video, again, if you haven't seen it, it's on my Twitter. It is absolutely a raucous environment at Colonial Life right now. Just an incredible time for South Carolina. And you know what? Like, we used to joke about Diesel. What I think's funny, my last point before we wrap this segment up, and there is a very good message on the stream from Wesley Roberts that I want to get to. What's interesting, Diesel, is 5-10 years ago, people used to joke and say, well, you know, South Carolina, all they have is women's basketball. And again, that's still going to be something said by Clemson fans down the road. But women's basketball at South Carolina used to be like, yeah, they're good. They won a national championship. Now they are women's basketball. Like, they are the standard. And I think that is what's so impressive with what Dawn Staley's done. I love what Wesley said on the stream. The sad thing is the team doesn't bring viewership as much as the player. Replace Caitlin Clark with any other player, and ratings go way down in that game last night, even with arguably one of the greatest teams ever. He's 100% right.
Yeah.
He really is.
Yeah.
Teams don't draw it, man.
That's true. We need elite talent to really shine in this sport going forward to keep this level of play and this level of national attention where it is. I mean, it's an impossible ask to say we need Caitlin Clark 2.0. I mean, there's a reason why she's getting all this accolade, because she's one of one. She really is. And that's going to be the challenge of this game going forward, to market the stars until you got to have a solid 3, 4, 5 stars of the game.
Sure.
Which I think is something that has really plagued the men's game, is they haven't done a great job of marketing stars over the past couple of years. And if they can market 5, one emerges every year as the marketable face of the sport, the sky's the limit for this game.
I have not heard, Diesel, real quick before break, I have not heard what Caitlin Clark said about her team and her achievements, and I want to hear that audio. This is Caitlin Clark on how proud of herself how proud she is of herself and the team for achieving what they did.
I don't have much time to, sit around and sulk and be upset. And I don't think that's what I'm about either, is, yeah, I'm sad we lost this game, but I'm also so proud of myself. I'm so proud of my teammates. I'm so proud of this program. There's a lot to be proud of, but, there's going to be tears. It is sad that this is all over, and this is the last time I'm going to put on an Iowa jersey. So I think just reflecting back and, soaking in everything that I was able to do, because basically anybody other than me and Coach Bluter never thought this was possible.
Diesel, what I didn't like, again, me ranting about national television shows. This morning, I was not at home. I was somewhere else where there was a TV, and it was like probably 9 o'clock. And top of the hour, it was not the lead of the show, but top of the hour. What were they talking about? Not South Carolina women's basketball, but how the sport is going to recover from not having Caitlin Clark. So again, national shows, they're leading with Caitlin Clark, as they were all season, rightfully so. But there's a lot of people, in my opinion, who are putting South Carolina on the back burner, man. Recognize it. They're the best. You got to have a team over individual play any day of the week. All right, Diesel, when we return, last night, I was about to go to bed, but news broke about who? John Calipari is leaving Kentucky. We'll get into it next. He's Diesel. I'm Cole Bryson, and this is the Fan Upstate. John Calipari. That's right. No longer the head basketball coach at Kentucky. Are you kidding me?
And exactly 0 Kentucky fans are angry about this.
The majority are probably happy. Kentucky has won 1 national championship in his tenure, and that was with Anthony Davis.
Yep. Not good enough.
No, it's not. So,
1 in a coach's tenure is garbage if you're a Kentucky fan.
well, especially if you're John Calipari. You know, you're supposed to be the guy. This year, you had a really good team. You were supposed to make a run this year. So news breaks last night, late last night. There were rumors earlier in the evening, but official news broke last night, Diesel, that John Calipari is leaving to take what job? Arkansas. So as I put on my Twitter, on my tweet earlier, teasing this segment brought to you, I guess, I'm joking here, in terms of John Calipari's decision to go to Arkansas is brought to you by Tyson Chicken, because Tyson Chicken, I don't know if you know or not, is the #1 bag, cha-ching, money. Tyson Chicken is the company that is in the Arkansas NIL pot.
So you're telling me that every time I go buy my bag of dinosaur-shaped Tyson
Yes.
chicken nuggets, I'm putting money in Arkansas's pocket?
You're putting money in Coach Cal's pocket.
Son of a...
Yes. So no more dinosaur-shaped chicken nuggets for Diesel. Those are really good, though. Why are those good? Yeah. So Tyson Chicken lures Coach Cal at Arkansas. So Kentucky, this is announced late last night. He doesn't get fired. You know, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. What do they do now?
They wanted his head.
They did. And because of the contract, there was really nothing they could do. So before we get into the Kentucky candidates, Diesel, why Arkansas? Does Coach Cal really feel like he can go to a school in the same conference? Arkansas, they've had success. It's been some years. They had 2 or 3 Sweet 16 appearances, maybe Elite 8 appearances in a row. They've had some success, but it's been a while. I don't know that I love this.
Well, before we get into that, I do want to remind you that we have national championship game coverage tonight. 7:30 is when we will feature pregame coverage of the national championship game between UConn and Purdue. Tip-off of that game is 9:20, so you will get a ton, UH-ton of national championship preview right here on the Fan Upstate. We're going to be the only place on the radio in the Upstate where you can listen to pregame and play-by-play of the national championship game tonight. But you know why Arkansas?
No.
It's because he can have the exact same results that he's got at Kentucky, and they'll build him a statue. You know, Musselman got them to a point where they are a really solid program.
Mm-hmm.
Really solid program. So the legwork of building Arkansas into a desirable place for college basketball has already been done. So Coach Cal, all he has to do is step in like a knight in shining armor with his sword drawn over his head, say, we're gonna rip this place apart. It's gonna be great. Arkansas fans are gonna love it. And all he's got to do is go in there and be himself. He can still recruit. Now, I'm sure he's going to lose out on a handful of guys that he otherwise would have gotten.
Sure.
If he was at Kentucky, just because the brand still holds some value. But if he can turn Arkansas into 85% of what Kentucky basketball is, which is what, like, you know, most programs are striving to become. You want to be 80% of what Kentucky is.
Mm-hmm.
If he can do that, he's going to win a ton of basketball games at Arkansas. He's going to keep getting them into the tournament. He's going to keep making Sweet 16 and Elite 8 runs, and he'll pop and maybe get one at Arkansas.
I don't think he can replicate at Arkansas, Diesel, what he's did at Kentucky. I don't think Arkansas has the draw, the lure that Kentucky has. And let's be honest, as we said coming into the segment, he underachieved at Kentucky.
Well, Arkansas is a V8 muscle car. Kentucky is a Lamborghini.
Right. He did not achieve what he was supposed to achieve in his career at Kentucky. Coach Cal, for as good as he can recruit, roster management And building his roster was not the right situation, was not the right play, was not the right move, if you will. What I'm getting at is when it came to Cal building rosters, it worked getting players into the NBA draft because he did get players into the NBA. He has many, many players. You go look on the NBA rosters. There are many, many players across the league who are from where? Kentucky. However, that style of roster building did not translate into championships. Anthony Davis did it one time because Anthony Davis was the best basketball player in the country. He willed that team to a championship, and that's the only one Cal got. And Cal built great teams, but every team he built was way too young. They could not go into the tournament and compete with older teams. We saw it this year. We've seen it 100 times, it feels like. For as great as he was at putting players in the NBA, he'll go down, and Diesel is one of the Hall of Fame coaches, all-time greats in college basketball. But he did not consistently get it done, and Kentucky, whether they'll admit it or not, Kentucky was not pleased with the way that Coach Cal performed this season in the tournament.
Well, I mean, hey, I love watching teams with all the resources and everything in place and the big brand recognition and the boosters and the sold out stadiums. I love watching those teams go down because they're just not experienced. I mean, we've seen it so many times. I caution, I'm afraid of my plan of redoing the NCAA tournament because it'll mean there's less of the big boys who are maybe a little bit suspect for the elite mid-majors to go out and beat. But I mean, that's who Kentucky was. They were a program that got beat by experience. They did time and time and time again. And it blows me away. And you wonder what's the chicken and what's the egg here? Is it just the Kentucky brand that kids only want to come to and take advantage of for a year and get into the NBA? Or is it that the coach was building his roster that way? I mean, you would think that a guy like Cal would have the ability to get these great recruits that he's always gotten and keep some of them around until they're juniors, at least. You would think that Cal, with all the resources they've got there at Kentucky, would be able to bring in a guy or two every year that could provide that much needed level of experience. Clemson did it with Joe Girard. Why couldn't Kentucky get a guy? I mean, Joe Girard probably wouldn't even be on Kentucky's radar as far as a transfer portal guy.
Right.
But why can't they get a junior or senior transfer, throw a big bag at him, say, hey, you're coming to Kentucky, right? I'll put you in the league. Maybe Syracuse wasn't going to put you in the league. Maybe Arkansas wasn't going to put you in the league. Maybe Oregon State or Oregon wasn't going to put you in the league. But I will. Sure. And I need your experience and I need your presence in the locker room. It blows me away that he wasn't able to get those guys. And if he was getting them, because I'm not an expert on Kentucky's roster over the past 2 or 3 seasons, they weren't winning them titles.
No. And I think I agree with Spur Daddy here. Spur Daddy says on the stream, he'll take Arkansas to a few Sweet 16s and an Elite 8, and that's about as good as he'll have them. I think I agree with you on that, Spur Daddy, just not putting a ton of thought and effort into it thus far. I will say this, though. When you talk about Kentucky, before we get to a break, Kentucky now has an opportunity to go get their guy. Cal didn't meet expectations, right? I think the top names that jumps off the page to me are, number one, Scott Drew. I think what Scott Drew has done over the years at Baylor would warrant Kentucky interviewing him. I think he will get interviewed by Kentucky. He's a heck of a basketball coach. Nate Oates, who just lost in the Final Four, certainly may get a look from Kentucky. He's a heck of a coach. Would you want to go from Bama to Kentucky, though? I don't know. Bama's a pretty good job. And then Billy Donovan. Billy Donovan, who is coaching the Chicago Bulls right now. They're doing their best to make a play-in game. Who was at Florida for most of his career. Billy Donovan's a really, really hot name right now, and that name may gain traction. I don't think they have a chance, Diesel, to go get a Jay Wright or a Dan Hurley. I really don't. I don't think they'll get those guys as good as they would be. I think they would be great for Kentucky, but I think Hurley's set at UConn, and I think Jay Wright's happy calling games on TV. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, Kentucky is not going to be the kind of program that wants to bring in a project. They want somebody that's as close to a sure thing as they could possibly get. I mean, Mark Pope at BYU in his first season in the Big 12, he won 23 games, went 23-11. Solid option there. Sean Miller out of Xavier. I mean, would they go Rick Pitino? He's old
I don't think so.
can be, old as dirt, but he's got the name.
Mhm.
I mean, I think a really quality option might even be Amir Abdur-Rahim from USF. He was elite this season. What Spur Daddy, though, highlights on the stream, he says Kentucky could hire Brad Brownell since he's elite after taking Clemson to the Elite Eight. Yeah, I know. Spur Daddy's got jokes today.
He's good, man.
He's got jokes.
I like it. Keep them
Yeah.
coming. That's fantastic. We'll get back to this because I know we're due for a break. But the Rick Pitino thing, Diesel, we could spend three hours on this, but I don't see it happening. He's not a long-term guy. Rick's older. You said
He's
it.
71.
Yeah. Kentucky doesn't want somebody for 5 to 6 years, do they? Maybe, if that.
I mean, just looking at him, he might only have 5 or 6 months. It's mean. I know. I know it's mean.
Diesel.
But he kind of reminds me of the Crypt Keeper, and I can't unsee it. Now that I've seen it, I can't unsee it. When we come back, we react to the men's Final Four. Some fantastic basketball over the weekend. NC State fell short against Purdue. Alabama played with UConn for a good chunk of that game, but UConn ended up pulling away at the very end. We'll react to the men's Final Four next. I'm Diesel. He's Cole Bryson. You're listening to Wire to Wire, and we are the Fan Upstate. We spent the entire off segment talking about what Kentucky could and should do with that vacancy. Spur Daddy says Kentucky will hire Billy Donovan and win 2 or 3 natties. That's the smart play.
Sure.
That's the smart play. I mean, we both went down a list of potential candidates there. And Billy Donovan is the only one who's not, 1 foot in the grave. Sorry, Rick Pitino and his family, who has experienced that level of pressure before, has won national championships before.
Yeah.
And I think could handle the pressure at Kentucky very, very well. Lamont Paris, as good as he was, and his name has been thrown around quite a bit. I think Spur Daddy also threw his name out there. Lamont Paris has never experienced that level of pressure. And at South Carolina, you don't have that level of pressure. I mean, if you make the Sweet 16, you've had a fantastic season at South Carolina.
Yeah.
The Sweet 16 at Kentucky is a disappointment.
I don't know that Lamont's ready for that.
No. Maybe a few years down the road.
Sure.
Sorry, South Carolina fans, but it's true. If Lamont Paris makes deep runs for 3, 4, 5 years in a row from this point forward, he's going to get snatched up by a bigger program.
Yeah, and you don't want
happen.
And if you're a South Carolina fan, you don't want that to happen. You want Lamont to stay because Lamont seems to be the guy, but Lamont's not ready. It's so fascinating because Kentucky is one of the most high-pressured college basketball jobs in the country, maybe the most. Duke and North Carolina, for as good as they are and as blue as they are in the blood, I don't know that they still carry the same pressure as Kentucky does, man. It's different in Kentucky. Like, if you're not winning, you said it. Yeah. The Kentucky fans are glad that Cal's gone. They really are.
For them, the floor is an Elite Eight.
Mm-hmm.
The floor is an Elite Eight.
And
they pump a ton of resources and money into it.
They do. And to be honest with you, they deserve that, man. Like, they deserve to be better than Cal was. And again, Cal won a ton of games. He's a Hall of Famer. He'll go down as one of the best to ever do it. He won a ton of games. I'm not disrespecting that, but Cal did not live up to Kentucky expectations. He didn't. The bottom line is he was great. He was not great enough. He did not develop rosters the way he should have, and it showed.
No, you're absolutely right about that. On to the men's Final Four. We teased the coverage of that. Now, the national championship game is tonight. UConn versus Purdue, which I think is the matchup a lot of people expected. In the end, not me, because I had Auburn winning the whole thing. My bracket got blown to hell on the first day. But I mean, you kind of predicted and hoped that this would happen. Now, Purdue has certainly outplayed themselves and outplayed their history. They've had a history of losing big games early in the tournament over the past couple of seasons. They've had these elite teams, these elite rosters for the past couple of seasons, but they haven't been able to put that together. How we got here, Alabama versus UConn, that game was fairly even on paper. You know, you look at field goal percentage and 3-point percentage and free throws. I mean, UConn was just slightly better at everything over the course of that game. Alabama played one heck of a basketball game to be able to stick with UConn, but it just kind of like UConn just put that pressure on them across the board. 31 field goals for UConn, 26 for Alabama. 10 3-pointers for UConn, 11 for Alabama. So like one of the only categories that Alabama was better. They were only 3 points better in that category. UConn out-rebounded Alabama. They, on the offensive and defensive side of the board, they moved the ball better with 20 assists to Alabama's 9. So you know, UConn was just they're not that elite team offensively. I mean, I think the last time I looked at their offensive rankings nationally, they were in the 25-ish range. They're a very good offensive team, but they're not an elite offensive team. They're really good on defense. And so they were able to just put the pressure on Alabama, keep the score low, and just pull away late. You know, it was kind of it wasn't a big dramatic blowout win. They just pulled away late.
They did. And I'll tell you what's fascinating from my standpoint, and we're going to get to the phones in just a second. 844-FAN-PHONE. Phone lines are open. Get your thoughts in. 844-326-3663. We have this NCAA tournament where there's 64-plus teams. You have the play-in games, And the idea of the tournament is to allow teams to, like Furman's in the past, like FAU, to allow teams to have a chance to make a run. Some years, Diesel, we do see teams make runs all the way to the finals, and we don't see the Blue Bloods. However, this year it's interesting that we are seeing the two best teams come all the way through the tournament, even though there were really, really good star-studded deep teams in this tournament. We've seen Purdue and we've seen UConn, who are the two best teams, in my opinion. You said it just a second ago. We all kind of saw this coming as we got toward the Sweet 16, Elite Eight. I picked UConn to win it all from the start. I did think that UConn was just better than everybody. I still think they're better than Purdue. I love the way that Zach Edey's come onto the scene for Purdue, but Alabama gave UConn a great, great game, and they really deserve a ton of credit because Nate Oates, I don't want to say he did he exceeded expectations for this Alabama team, but this Alabama team was so well coached this year. It was just truly phenomenal to watch. Purdue, on the other hand, you have to have a big man. We've seen that this year. It'll be very interesting. We'll get into it as the show goes on later in the program about tonight's game, who we like tonight. But NC State, for as good as a season as they and Alabama had, Diesel, Purdue and UConn were just the blue bloods that lasted. They were the better team, and it was fun to watch.
I just had this thought, the big difference between college basketball and college football. And in college football, nearly 50% of teams end their season with a win. Like, you got bowl games, there's a winner and there's a loser.
Mm-hmm.
College basketball is just a completely different animal that once you make it into the tournament, 67 teams are ending their season with a loss.
Sure.
Only one can win this thing. And I think that's what makes it the greatest spectacle in sports. It's just so unique the way this tournament is set up. And, it's like, it's difficult for a football first fan to fathom, like, oh, it feels good to have just made it this far, but
sure,
you still end your season with a loss. And yeah, what Nate Oates has been able to do this season at Alabama, he is continuing to raise the expectation of what Alabama basketball is. And that's got to be a scary thing. I mean, it's shades of early 2000s Florida when they were elite at basketball and football at the same time.
Real quickly before the break, Dewey, your thoughts on this past weekend's Final Four games. I'm sure this will be spectacular, this phone call.
Yes, Dawn Staley, she's going to be the next best thing at South Carolina. And you know what? Shane Beamer is going to be the next best thing, too, because he's going to take notes from her.
Dewey, how can there be two next best things? Dawn Staley is already the best thing at South Carolina. All Shane Beamer can do is be number two.
Yeah. Thanks for the call, Dewey. 844-FAN-PHONE. He better take a lot of notes talking about Shane Beamer. All right, coming up, that was hour number one. It absolutely flew by. We will get into women's college basketball next. Diesel and I's thoughts on where the sport goes from here. He's Diesel. I'm Cole Bryson, and this is the Fan Upstate.
So now that the biggest star in women's college basketball is out of college basketball, the question is, what happens next?
Don't tell ESPN that. God.
Yeah, they need a star like Caitlin Clark so bad. I mean, we're going to get inundated with profiles and players to watch next season, as they should, because the game is phenomenal to watch. No, it's not as high flying as men's basketball. No, it's not as fast paced as men's basketball. But you know what you don't see also? You don't see as much out of control women's college basketball. And like my dad, like I grew up, my dad was my, I don't know what we called it in basketball, rec league basketball coach.
Sure.
And he would always complain about out of control basketball.
Mm-hmm.
You know, players who wanted to put on the me show, drive into the lane, out of control, hope they get fouled. We see way too much of that in the men's game. You don't see nearly as much of that in the women's game. The athleticism is tamped down just a little bit. But what it also does is it increases and improves the fundamental nature of women's basketball. So where do we go from here? Now that Angel Reese is gone from the sport, now that Caitlin Clark is gone from the sport, will we ever see the women's game reach the levels and the heights that it reached this year again? It's a very interesting question, and we want your thoughts on this. 71307, start your text with keyword fan. You can always call in on the Renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone. That's 844-326-3663. Did women's college basketball peak this year, or will we see something like this again in the future? You tell us.
The reality of it is, Diesel, it absolutely did peak, right? The numbers will tell you it peaked. It's never been as sensational. It's never been as popular as it is. It's never been as polarizing it is today. But I will say this, you never know what kind of superstar could come from this. I was not alive like when I wasn't a basketball enthusiast when Michael Jordan hit the scene. Like the NBA, you talk about polarizing.
Sure.
That is a perfect example. And I believe that the NBA had this same conversation when Michael was probably in Washington, probably on the tail end of his career. I think it's very interesting, though, when you talk about women's college basketball. The reality of it is, as you said, the athleticism at the women's game, Diesel, is not what you see at the men's game. They're fantastic athletes. Don't hear me wrong. I'm just saying what you see at the women's game, in the women's game, is a totally different sport. It really is. It's a different sport. So I'll say this. Women's basketball is at its peak. Will it ever be as big as it was this year, 2023, 2024? Man, I sure do hope so, because this was a lot of fun. But my prediction is no. My prediction is it will not be. It's going to be really, really hard to find another Caitlin Clark. I just don't know that there's one out there.
Well, look, Caitlin Clark is to women's basketball what Tiger Woods is to golf.
Mm-hmm.
She's a star, not only on the court like Tiger was on the course, but she captured lightning in a bottle when it came to her ability to go out and break records night in and night out, never have an off night. Funny thing is, like, we didn't really ever hear that much from Caitlin Clark. She didn't seek out the microphone. You know, she didn't pursue having this massive Instagram account with millions of followers. Now she's got a whole mess of followers on social media.
She wasn't in it for the clout.
She wasn't in it for the clout. She was in it for the game.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there's a very subtle difference between somebody who's in it for the clout, who's really good, who we're just waiting for them to fall, versus somebody who's in it for the game.
Sure.
You know, it's like the difference, Cole, if you go back and you watch the first Dumb and Dumber movie, which was just perfect as a comedy. And then you kind of watch the second one. And it's the same cast, I think same writing team, but something just felt off, right? Like we want to see stars with a ton of ego fall. There was a whole lot of women's basketball fans who were happy to see Angel Reese and Kim Mulkey fall
There were.
for that exact reason. Players and coaches who are out there for the clout versus just the true competitors. And, I said before that women's college basketball needs to market stars and try to recreate stars. They can spend a whole ton of money marketing the best players in the game.
Yeah.
And none of them would reach even close to the levels of lightning in a bottle cultural phenomenon that Caitlin Clark was.
I agree. And that is because you're right, Diesel. What you said right there is 100% right. And that is because Caitlin Clark's game, I'm afraid, will not be replicated.
No.
Well, the way that she could shoot the basketball, we talk about it in the NBA with Steph Curry. Caitlin Clark literally changing the game of women's basketball. I don't know that we'll ever see a shooter, a basketball player in the women's game as good as her. Now, going back to the marketing aspect, someone with clout, someone who's famous, someone who has the followers and garners the attention. Diesel, I said that I don't think we'll ever see this again. However, I'll say this. I do think we could see, with social media and marketing being as strong as it is today, I do think we could see a star in the next 2 decades that's as polarizing as Caitlin Clark, right? However, I want the listener to understand that is a different conversation than the basketball player Caitlin Clark. What I mean by that is marketing has the ability to do anything, right? You can do anything with some marketing and somebody who's really polarizing, has a great personality. Caitlin really didn't have, as you said, she didn't really have a big personality. We know Caitlin Clark because of her game. And when I say, to answer your question to start the segment, when I say that I'm worried that we'll never see this again, I don't mean from the marketing standpoint, because we could see, somebody, these big networks push a certain player. That can happen. But from the talent level, I don't know that we'll ever see. You don't see many Caitlin Clark. She was truly a generational type player with her ability to score from anywhere on the court. I had never seen until this year. I've seen Steph Curry do it, Diesel. I've seen other players in the NBA and some in college do it. I've never seen a woman pull up from anywhere she wants to on the court and drain a three.
Well, consider the fact that it's been 54 years since Pete Maravich finished playing college basketball.
Mm-hmm.
So it took 54 years for anyone to beat his record. And where I'm going with this is what Caitlin Clark was this year was a perfect storm. So she had to have a phenomenal rookie, freshman and sophomore year, or last season, we're probably not talking about her. She had to have an insane junior year, make it all the way to the national championship game and lose.
Mm-hmm.
Then she had to do it again. Then she had to break records night in and night out to stand a chance to beat Pete Maravich's scoring record. And then she needed all these news outlets to pick it up and talk about it. And then she needed LSU to be good so that they could run into each other in the tournament. They needed South Carolina to be elite again so that they could run into each other in the tournament. I mean,
You're right.
It's a perfect storm. We talk about how hard it is to win championships. And like everybody in an organization has to be pulling in the same direction to win championships
Sure.
in any sport. I mean, everybody from the head coach and the GM all the way down to the janitor who's making sure that he's not messing up and leaving trash in people's lockers, et cetera, et cetera. Everyone has to be pulling in the right direction. So the stars had to align.
Yeah, they did.
Much in the way that the moon, at least here, 81% aligned with the sun, gave us that beautiful show out there earlier. But like, are we going to be waiting another 50 years for anyone, regardless of male or female, to have another type of career that Caitlin Clark had? Oh yeah, and she had to not get injured.
Yeah,
and she had to be on a team with good players around her.
Good coach.
I mean, Caitlin Clark could have been on any random team, and not had the players around her that she had, and not have achieved everything that she did, and not have made a national championship game appearance run like they made last year and made it again this year.
I don't know that it'll be 50, but I'll tell you this. I think it'll be 10 at least. And I know the game doesn't want that.
Matt Kraft, is this true? We need to fact check this. He says she scored more points this year than the Iowa football team scored during her entire career.
God, I hope that's
Iowa.
not true. I hope that's not true. But it probably is.
Billy D makes another really good point here as well. What level of investment are we going to see in women's college basketball going forward? Now that the iron is as hot as it's going to be, are we going to see a national scale investment in youth basketball? Like, consider, last year, 2 years ago, before that, we spent a lot of time on the station talking about the explosion in softball, women's softball, and the fact that the college softball has exploded the way that it has. Now, college softball will never achieve the heights that women's college basketball has achieved this year, but there's been a tremendous increase in investment in college softball or in youth softball to get them to the college level. Are we going to see the exact same thing in women's or girls basketball?
Yeah.
And then see the specialization in basketball and see that, move its way on up to the college game.
I do think, Diesel, to answer that question, I think it's fascinating. I do think that there will be girls, even at a very young age, who pick up a basketball because of Caitlin Clark. I really do.
Absolutely.
I think there will be young females across the world who get into basketball, and hopefully of those that do, man, I hope one of them can be the next Caitlin Clark, because this was so much fun. But you know what, man? There's a lot of talent on this earth. There's a lot of talent in this country. This country, one of the things that we do have is a lot of talent in a lot of different areas, man. And you know what? I say it might be 10 years, but I sure do hope I'm wrong. I sure do hope there's somebody out there who can transcend the game and shoot the way Caitlin Clark did. Because as good as her game was, Diesel, I'm not calling her just a shooter. I don't want it to seem like that. But what is she known for? She's known for her shooting, right? She's known for being able to pick the basketball up anywhere and make the three-point play. And now her dribbling and her passing and her ability to finish at the rim, that's all fantastic as well. That's what that will transcend into the WNBA for her if she goes that direction. That's what's made her game so fantastic. But she's known for her shooting, and that's what we need is the women's game to continue to showcase shooters. Because the men's game did transcend, right? It went from a big man game from the Shaq days to the Steph Curry days. The men's game transcended even at the college level and has at the high school level to a game that is played beyond three-point line with guards and high ball screens. And I think the girls' game, if they can continue to produce athletes like Caitlin Clark, I think it's going to go the same direction.
Well, Caitlin Clark, we saw last week, or we heard last week, that she had that $5 million offer from the Big Three league. I genuinely hope that she doesn't take it, because I don't want to see Caitlin Clark become a sideshow. However, with her ability to shoot and her star power and her marketability that she already has, I could see her easily being propped up, in a way like Billie Jean King was when she battled Bobby Riggs in the Battle of the Sexes tennis match. I could certainly see her being invited to things, because we also love that stuff too, right? I mean, it started with Tiger versus Phil, like the solo match that they had. We're looking at the absurdity of the fight game right now with the Pauls getting in and fighting Manny Pacquiao and fighting Mike Tyson and all these guys. Like they're the young guys who are up and coming. They're the sideshow, but they're fighting the old stars. I mean, are we going to see Caitlin Clark v. Steph Curry type event where those two go head to head, and how insanely marketable will that be? Plus, we have to consider how much marketing she's going to receive as a WNBA player. I mean, she's going to end up being Forrest Gump. She's going to have her face on everything.
Sure.
She's going to have her face on a brand of Flexo-Light ping pong paddles.
I'll tell you this.
Everywhere in the game. We don't even know where this is going to go yet.
Before we get to break, we do have Clemson baseball coach Erik Bakich joining us in the next segment. But before we get to a break, Diesel, I think the WNBA, and you may not agree with me, But I think the WNBA right now is at a crossroads that if they took the right turn and chose the right path, I think the WNBA could elevate to something it's never been. What I mean by that is, with Caitlin Clark's coming into the WNBA, hopefully, right? As we continue to put the Angel Reese and the Camila Cardosos, those type players in the WNBA will be something that is attractive to the common basketball fan. I think, Diesel, that the WNBA should do away with their home stadiums. I think they should get rid of their home stadiums, and the WNBA should take the approach that the Harlem Globetrotters have and travel to cities across the country and allow that to be their marketing base and marketing platform to say, Caitlin Clark's coming to your city. Angel Reese is coming to your city. Camelia Cardoso and Caitlin Clark in Chicago, in New York, in Madison Square Garden, in LA. I think that you talk about marketing. The WNBA could really boost its game if they took a completely different approach. And I know there are a million different things that go into their home stadiums, where they play, and things like that. But I'm just saying, if they took an approach, if they went and sat down and thought about this, I think the WNBA could really pick up some steam if they treated it like a tour, because people who live in South Carolina, who live in Georgia, who live in Texas would be able to see WNBA stars more frequently, which I think would help the game rather than them playing in their hometowns.
It would, yeah. I mean, we know that home attendance for WNBA games sucks.
Sure.
So, yeah, it would certainly make a lot more sense if some of these teams, instead of having one home stadium, they rotated between 3 or 4 home stadiums over the course of their the season, and that way it would bring them much closer to more fans.
I'd love to see it. I thought about that over the weekend, and I'd love to see it.
Great idea.
I love it. I would love the WNBA to be able to showcase their players worldwide, man. Like, I would love to go watch a WNBA game. If Caitlin Clark and the Angel Reeses of the world are playing, it really would be fascinating to me. So I'm all for it. I don't know if it'll ever happen. Probably not, but I would absolutely love it. All right, coming up next, Clemson baseball has been on an absolute tear this season. They've had an incredible start. We will talk to Erik Bakich, head baseball coach at Clemson, and ask him what the recipe to success has been this season for the Clemson Tigers. He's Diesel. I'm Cole Bryson, and this is the Fan Upstate. It is now time to talk a little college baseball. College baseball in the area, a lot of good teams, a lot of good competition in the state of South Carolina. And the team that is making the most headlines is Clemson baseball. We've talked a lot of Clemson baseball on this program, and it is our honor to be joined by Erik Bakich, head baseball coach of the Clemson Tigers. Coach, number one, we appreciate you joining us today and taking time for the program. I want to get started with the conversation of the sweep of Notre Dame, a very impressive weekend for your team. But I want to know, what were your thoughts? What were your feelings as you saw that 11-1 lead kind of dwindle and become a tie game in the ninth inning, Coach?
Well, hey, thanks for having me on, Cole. And yeah, I tried to erase that one from my memory already. So
sorry about that.
Appreciate you bringing it up. Yeah.
What good lesson does that provide, though, Coach?
Well, it's just, it was unfortunate. Obviously, nobody dialed it up that way. We had a 11-2 lead going into the eighth inning, thinking that, it was a good time to get a lot of guys in the game. And it just, I think Aiden Canuck had made things look so easy, which obviously it's not, because we had some close games the previous two. But, sometimes we've been on the other side of that now this year as well, where we face a really good pitcher. And then even though the bullpen arms are also good, they're not quite as good as what you saw from the starter. And that happened a few times at Florida State and Miami. And so they just started hitting some balls. And unfortunately, we were a little sloppy defensively. And before you know it, things unraveled quick. But, again, we've dealt with adversity all season long throughout the course of the games. We've had plenty of comebacks. We've had plenty of times where we've taken punches, and our guys, it was kind of one of those bend but don't break moments. And so unfortunately it's about as close you could get to breaking and giving up 4 in the 8th and 5 in the 9th. But we found a way to regather ourselves, refocus, get back up, dust off, and find a way to win the game.
He is Erik Bakich, head coach for Clemson baseball, number 2 in the country, 28-3 on the season right now. Coach, thanks for joining us here on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. To win 28 games this point in the season, you have to be able to win in multiple ways. So tell me about kind of the makeup of this team and like what way are they most comfortable winning, and in what way do you think they're least comfortable winning? I'm talking about, being in a pitching duel, playing small ball, hitting home runs.
Well, the answer is probably whatever it takes in that particular game. And that's a good thing, because the one thing we aren't is one-dimensional. And we've shown the ability to win in different ways. And all the credit goes to the players. I mean, they're the ones that have to buy into being able to know how to bunt and being able to base run and being able to play fundamental defense and throw strikes and all the things that lead to winning baseball. And there's plenty of times to get your best swing off and try to hit homers too. But just the ability to be multidimensional and whatever the game calls for, because there's certain times where the wind is blowing in and the fly balls aren't flying. And you need to bunt and run and do other things. So we've been able to win in a multitude of ways, and it's really whatever the situation in the game called for. And it's credit to our players for finding whatever that was. But this is no time to pick our head up and look around and pat ourselves on the back. We haven't done anything yet. We're off to a nice start, but we've got, clearly, as we saw yesterday, we've got work to do and more growth to be had. And so we'll just stay locked in on that.
Hey, Coach, just for those in the area, because he is a local product, that are curious, when Tristan Smith, who's been battling an ankle injury for you guys, when he does get back to being ready, where does he fit into the rotation for you guys now that you had a few games without him? Obviously more than a few games, but also what do you expect from him when you get him back, one of your best arms?
Well, he's not only one of the best on our team, and not only one of the best in the ACC, he's one of the best in the country. So getting him back will be a huge boost to our rotation, to our team. We're looking forward to getting him back. We're hoping he gets back quick. Could be this weekend, could be the weekend after. But he is one of the best in the country, and he is having a great year. And so getting him back in action in the rotation on the weekend as a weekend starter will be critical. I don't know where that fits and when that will be, but it'll be soon, and having him back will be a huge lift for us.
Coach Erik Bakich, Clemson Tigers baseball. Coach, we spent the first hour of this show today talking about just how much of a star Caitlin Clark has been in women's college basketball this season. How do we make college baseball players stars in the same way?
Well, you're talking about the, best basketball player, arguably men's or women's, just statistically, and what she's done the last 2 years to elevate the Iowa program. It's been phenomenal. I mean, my wife and daughter aren't basketball fans, but they were watching the game, and we had the game on as well. And so I think when you have, and that's the beauty of sport is, somebody can elevate a program and capture the enthusiasm of a national audience. And, it takes a special run like what the Iowa women's team has done. And we just saw it with our own Clemson basketball team. And obviously Dabo has a long history of doing that. And we as a baseball program need to get back to that where, you have a magical run, and then then the storylines start to emerge of these individual athletes. And it's just a lot of fun, and people get behind it and start to get to know these players and learn about them. And it's just like everything then starts to really snowball from there. And so there's a lot of cool storylines that come out of team success, a lot of individual storylines that come out of team success. But it's all centered around team success.
Coach, talk about the impact that Blake Wright has had early in the season for you guys. Is that something you expected coming into the season? And then the second part of that question, how does a guy like Blake continue this success this tear that he's on right now? How does someone continue that high of a level of success all throughout the season?
The answer is yes. We saw that coming. I think last year was atypical for Blake. But this year he's just worked extremely hard. He's a two-time captain. He's a great leader. He pours into everybody else. He's a glue guy in the locker room. He has a relationship with everyone. So I think when he's up, there's a lot of guys pulling for him, and he's just the ultimate teammate. So you can see how he's thriving on a team that really values being great teammates. And that's just what he has to continue to do. He has to not only continue to put in the work himself, but where Blake really shines is he puts his arm around other guys and brings them with him and shows them the ropes and molds them into future leaders. And he's just a good dude, and he's a joy to be around. And, he's just, he's an easy guy to cheer for. And so I'm excited to continue to watch his success.
He's got his team number 2 in the country, Erik Bakich, baseball coach at Clemson. Can you go a little deeper on that, Coach? And can you tell us a little bit more about your team's personality? We don't see baseball players out on social media as much as other sports. So can you give me a sense of the team? Is it a goofy bunch? Are they a serious and focused bunch? Are they pranksters? Tell me a little bit more about the team.
Yeah, all of it. I mean, that's the thing. We've got a blend of a bunch of different personalities. And that's the cool thing about sports teams is you take all these personalities and all these backgrounds and guys from all different parts of the country and all different upbringings, and you mold it together into one group, one tight unit, pulling the rope in one direction. But the one quote of part of our shared language that always kind of comes back with this particular team is how you do anything is how you do everything. And they have been very motivated, chip on shoulder type motivation since day one of wanting to be excellent and wanting to be elite, whether that's in the classroom, setting a new team GPA record, shattering a team GPA record, really, doing even more community service than we did last year. I mean, these are all things they did in the fall. And you say, well, what's that got to do with winning games? Well, it has everything to do with winning games, because how you do anything is how you do everything. So they're very just on task, self-motivated, disciplined. And so there's a carryover. And they're just a lot of fun to be around. Low maintenance, high production, great dudes. And, just kind of just chasing these celebratory moments, these Christmas morning moments, and just want them to have as special of a season as we can possibly have.
Coach, before we let you go, when you talk about this team, their MO, their identity, when you look at the national rankings, Clemson obviously finds themselves at the very top, or close to the top, if you will. How do you not allow your team to get sucked into what the rankings say and keep their head down?
Well, our guys know they don't mean anything midseason. The final ranking is all that matters. And if we want to be ranked, let's be the number one ranked team at getting better. And that's what we talk about. Be the best at getting better. If we're going to be ranked in anything, let's be number one ranked at that. And so that's just kind of one thing we talk about week to week, is just that target on growth and improvement. Just keep getting better. Just keep your head down and keep improving. And the rankings will take care of themselves. So unfortunately, we don't spend too much time looking at and dissecting the rankings and in the week-to-week basis. We just know that if we keep getting better and if we're the best team in the country at getting better, then everything will take care of itself.
He is Erik Bakich, head baseball coach at Clemson. Coach, I don't know if that quote comes from somewhere else, but I know that how you do anything is how you do everything, as the villain's line from John Wick Chapter 4. Are you telling me that the team motto is the villain's line from John Wick Chapter 4?
I haven't seen John Wick Chapter 4, but sure, we'll take it.
Well, that's where I know it from. Coach, thank you so much, and continued success. I know that this team is going to keep winning, keep piling up the runs, and keep finding success. So good luck to you over the next couple of weeks.
Thanks so much, Coach.
Yeah. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. That is Erik Bakich, the head baseball coach at Clemson. Even-keeled, level-headed, just a super guy to talk to. We so much appreciate him taking time to join us on Wire to Wire. Diesel, Clemson, they've had their ups and downs over the past decade or so, but man, does it seem like they found their guy in baseball.
It really does. I mean, it was a little bit of a gamble, I think, to hire Erik Bakich out of Michigan. He had a lot of winning seasons at Michigan, hadn't had a ton of top-tier elite seasons at Michigan. So I understand why a lot of Clemson fans were a little hesitant when that was who the hire was. But man, looking back on it and just what he has done in such a short time at Clemson, you got to love the fact and got to love the way that, 44-19 in his first season in 2023, 28-3 so far this season. It seems as if they've done the right thing, hired the right guy. And man, we talk about the synergy among schools that are successful at multiple sports and the way these coaches work together. We know that Dabo Swinney was instrumental in bringing in Joe Girard for the basketball team. I would love to know. We could sit and talk with Coach Bakich for another 45 minutes and get all of our questions answered. How much synergy is there between him and Brad Brownell, between him and Dabo Swinney, and the soccer coach who's out there winning titles, and the golf coach who's out there winning titles? Everybody is pulling in the right direction. It's hard to win. And when everybody across all the sports aren't in competition with each other, but trying to lift each other up, man, that's when a athletic program as a whole can be a very dangerous thing.
It is. And what's interesting is Clemson baseball, since Coach Bakich arrived, they've had a different identity. Monty Lee obviously did not perform to Clemson expectations, and Clemson fans weren't happy with the way that Monty Lee, he felt like coming into that program, he could take them to consistent Omaha visits. He just wasn't able to do so. And Erik Bakich, in his first year, toward the tail end of the season, rattles off 22 of his last 25 wins, puts Clemson in great position last year. Yeah, Monty took him to 2 super regionals, I think, or 1 or 2 super regionals Monty Lee did. But I just feel that the recruits and the guys that Erik Bakich is getting now at Clemson is creating the type of culture that he wants there. And you can hear him talk about it and the type of culture that is needed in order to win, because he hit the nail on the head with so many things that he said. But Clemson baseball just didn't quite have that culture. They had great players. They had the Seth Beers. They had guys who could really do damage, but I think they're in a really, really good spot now. Yeah, that was a great interview.
It really was. And if you're a Gamecock baseball fan, you got to be nervous and watching your rivals up the road finding that success, seeming to be doing everything right when South Carolina baseball is streaky this season, to say the least. We're going to get into that later on in the show as well. But when we come back, we're going to keep it on the diamond. We're going to go Atlanta Braves and give you an update on, man, something that Braves fans are not going to want to hear when it comes to the right elbow of one Spencer Strider. That's next on the Fan Upstate.
If you're hanging out with your buddies talking about the Atlanta Braves on the 8th of April, 2024, the good news is the Atlanta Braves, they are really good. They are loaded. They have a really good chance of making a run. The bad news is, in that conversation with your buddies, they're going to bring up some not so good news. Today, 13 minutes ago, it was tweeted out that Spencer Strider is being examined as we speak. David O'Brien tweeted this, that he is being examined by Dr. Keith Meister in Arlington, Texas. That, if you know who that doctor is and you know why you go to Arlington, is not a good sign for Braves fans. So they're making a determination today regarding the damaged ulnar collateral ligament, ulnar, however you say it. I'm not an elbow expert. Yeah, UCLA. That UCLA, I said. That definitely not it. UCL, as my words came out too fast. The UCL in his pitching elbow. So, without saying the two words that we all fear, I will say, Braves fans, if they get any other news that it's not TJ, they will be thrilled. However, he's in Arlington. If it is what we think it could be, this is, Diesel, a huge, huge blow to the Atlanta Braves pitching staff. Strider, one of the best in the majors.
I think, to make it sound a little bit better for Braves fans, maybe instead of calling it TJ surgery, we call it Tommy Bahama surgery. Maybe make you feel a little bit better because, the shirts, they're festive. You don't feel so bad when you're wearing one.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a tough spot to be if you're a Braves fan. We have a quote here from Brian Snitker. He said, "Man, you hate that. You hate it for him. I feel really bad for him. I mean, the kid does everything right, loves to compete. We'll just wait and see what they decide to do. I'm sure they'll have something in a few days." Now, that was from earlier on this weekend. He left. He complained of some discomfort in his elbow 4 innings deep into a game versus the Diamondbacks. He gave up 5 runs on 7 hits. The Braves ended up winning the game 6-5, so at least you got that going for you. But it's possible that your ace is potentially out for the season, and that's a really tough place for this Braves team and fan base to be. The good news is that you're still pretty damn deep.
You are
at the pitching position. You've got time to make moves and get a guy in to replace Strider if that's what it ends up being. We already know that they have elevated Alan Winans from the AAA team to take his place in the rotation. We'll just have to see how this plays out once the doctors have enough time to, check the nuts and bolts.
Well, Braves fans know that. Well, let me back up. There are many Braves fans know right now that they don't need to panic. However, there are a group of Braves fans that are in panic mode right now because it does seem like this does happen to Atlanta. It does seem like this is something that Atlanta has some bad luck with. There are a lot of Braves fans who are already campaigning to get Trevor Bauer in Atlanta. And while Trevor Bauer is not a terrible option, I think the Braves are in wait-and-see mode. What's interesting is this rotation. If you have 5 really good pitchers like the Braves had, you have a really good chance of winning the World Series. However, if your ace goes down, you still have an ace in Max Fried. If you only have 4 really good pitchers and you don't have Strider, the reality of it is you still have a really good chance to go deep and make a run.
Well, the scary thing about that is, though, one of those 4 is Chris Sale.
Sure.
Chris Sale, who, when he's healthy, is elite, but Chris Sale is almost never healthy.
There are a lot of people who are in management positions, a lot of organizations who would love to have the Braves 4 arms other than Spencer Strider. So I don't think Braves fans should be in panic mode. Now, Chris Sale did look really good yesterday. I watched all the way up until South Carolina tipped off, which was the 7th inning, I believe. Chris Sale was phenomenal. The Braves looked good all weekend. Arizona's a good team. That's a great win for Atlanta, especially the opening night where Atlanta came back and won. That home crowd was a sellout. It was a great atmosphere from what I was told at Truist. So the Braves are okay. They're in good shape. They're really good. The bats, as long as the bats stay hot for the majority of the season, this team's still going to win a lot of games.
And they don't need to be – Braves fans don't panic if you're not on track to win 100 games.
Sure.
You got to win 90 games. You got to win 90 games to get into the postseason. And there you're going to be in a good shape. And they won 102 games last year, and they put themselves into a position where they were going to sit for a while during the wild card games. And so they cooled off. They weren't playing meaningful baseball when it really, really mattered. So maybe not winning as many games, silver lining, is not the worst possible thing.
I would remind Braves fans that in 2021, when you did win it all, go back to the series, the moment in time, because if you're a true Braves fan, you remember when Acuna went down. You remember the point in the season in 2021 where Ronald Acuna went down. Ronald Acuna, arguably one of the best players in baseball. You take Ohtani out of the picture, Ronald Acuna is the best player in baseball. You remember when Acuna went down, and there were no Braves fans, Diesel, who thought Atlanta could win the World Series in 2021. There was no one on this earth that came out and said, you know what, we may have lost Acuna, but we're still world champions. Now, I will say, Alex Anthopoulos made some incredible moves at the trade deadline to bring in guys. Peterson was huge. Guys like Soler, they were instrumental in that playoff run. Who knows what Acuna would have been, but this team still has a lot of talent, even if Strider is done, which, again, he may not be. He may not be. Best case scenario, he comes back in June, July, sometime in there, and you get Strider back. That's not a terrible scenario at all, because the Braves have enough guys in the farm system and in the bullpen, Diesel, to carry you through the first 3 months of the season without Strider. The fear is he's done for the season. If that's the case, it obviously, looking at it from a Braves angle, it stinks. But for him, man, coming out of Clemson, being one of the best rookies in all of baseball, as quickly as he did, as quickly as he came onto the scene, you just hate it for a guy like that.
Yeah, you do. And you mentioned his name, so I'll play this. Here's some audio of Chris Sale talking about getting his first win on the season and how he felt going through that game.
Felt good. Felt like I had all three pitches working. Felt like I was kind of, mostly commanding the zone. I don't think I had any walks today, so that's always nice. This is my first time pitching here ever, and then first time pitching here as a Brave, so it was special.
And you got to wonder if Spencer goes down,
mm-hmm.
how does it galvanize the team around him? You just said the same thing happened a few years ago with Acuna, and maybe having a reason to rally. Not that these guys are pros, but having a reason to rally gets them back into a position where they want to play that just little bit extra harder. But again, it stinks to have this happen, but you can, if it happens this early in the season, you've got time to pivot. You've got time to get somebody in his place, somebody who can be an ace, somebody, you're not going to find another guy like Spencer Strider, but maybe you can find somebody who's close to him, who can fall back into that rotation at 2, 3, 4. And then, you're not really falling off that much overall. And I do wonder if, and it may take years for this to play out, to get this kind of information, but in that interview, Brian Snitker said, man, these guys are throwing harder than they've ever thrown. They're being asked to throw more rapidly,
mm-hmm.
With this sped up pitch clock. I do wonder if that may come to fruition and show that, we're getting more elbow injuries because these guys are being asked to do this motion much quicker.
It could. You never know. Before we hit a break, let's go to the phones. JD joins the program. JD, what's up, man?
Hey, Cole, Diesel, thank you for taking my call, gentlemen. You led me right into it there, Diesel. Madcraft and I, if you guys aren't on the YouTube stream, you missed our conversation there. You guys should get in, check it out. We talk about all the other things, ongoing with the conversation. So Madcraft brought up the pitch clock. I mean, I think it's a good point. I also think it needs to be pointed out that Spencer Strider, he spent the off season learning a curveball.
Yep.
And so, man, when you got somebody throwing a curve and they throw so hard, I mean, their elbow angle. I remember when I pitched, man, I could not ice my elbow. If I iced it, it made it feel 100 times worse. I absolutely could not ice my elbow. So it'll be interesting to see how, these elbow injuries continue to move going forward. Spencer Strider, though, I think he got like the least amount of run support from any pitcher in the ML last year, despite, him only giving up 2 runs a game or whatever it was.
Sounds like Julio Teheran, right?
Right. So yeah, I think it'll be better. I think the Braves offense with him not pitching, I don't think they'll feel that pressure necessarily to put up those runs. So they might do it more organically. And one more thing, if I could, real quick before I know you guys got to run. I had one special thing for Cole and Diesel here. So man, Caitlin Clark yesterday, she had me worried. I thought she was going to be a Tolo. I thought she was going to turn it on, leave it on. She dropped 18 on them in the first quarter, bro. I thought she was going to go wire to wire. And thank God that Raven Johnson and the basketball gods, bless the Gamecock, Dawn Staley forever.
Thanks for the call, JD.
In Simpsonville, man. We love you, man. Thanks for calling into the show. You can always do the same thing on the Renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone, 844-326-3663. And a reminder that coming up at 7:30, we will be your exclusive home for play-by-play and pregame of tonight's national championship game. 7:30 coverage right here on the Fan Upstate. 9:20 tip-off in the desert. When we come back, it's time for Cole and I to put our fists up and throw some haymakers at each other. It's time for the 5 o'clock fight. Duck and weave. We're throwing punches here on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson, and it's time here for the segment that is sweeping the upstate. Why? Because we love it when people fight. We love drama. We love people getting smacked around. It's the reason why MMA is so big. It's the reason why Russian slap fighting is massive.
That crap's weird, man.
It is really weird. Like, why would you even why would you even volunteer? What makes one get into a sport that says, I have to stand here and take it, and there's a very good chance I get knocked out and don't even get a chance to throw
No, I'm good.
a slap? That's just ridiculous.
I'll pass.
I don't understand. It's like one step smarter than Rochambeau, which is I kick you in the nuts, you kick me in the nuts, and we'll see which one gives up first, because most likely the first person to get hit is going to give up. I don't understand this thing. But that's not this fight. This fight, we use our words, okay? Every single day at 5 o'clock, we'll fight about anything you want us to fight about. You just have to email into the show, but it's time for the 5 o'clock fight. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
It's an all-out slugfest, and nobody's leaving unscathed. 3 topics, 1 winner. It's the 5 o'clock fight on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson on the Fan Upstate.
That's right. The rules here are very simple. Cole and I have to disagree. We cannot argue the same side.
Dang it.
That would be boring. This would just be the 5 o'clock agreements. We don't want to do that. We want to fight about it. So.
Wait a minute. It'd be like other sports shows in the upstate. Sorry.
Some people are afraid, man. Some people don't want to disagree with other people. But hey, you judge, you decide who wins each round of the fight. We want you to text in 71307. Start your text with keyword fan, and you tell us who won the fight. Here we go with round 1.
Round 1, fight.
Which finals will have the higher ratings, Cole? Men's or women's? Who will have the higher ratings?
So I am going to say that the women's game yesterday between South Carolina and Iowa, Diesel, I'm going to say that they squeak by the men's tonight. I think so.
No.
It was so anticipated. I don't know if the follow-up act will be as entertaining. And in fact, because I disagreed and I want to be right, I'm not going to watch tonight, so it'll take one out. It'll take one out.
Well, it's also your job, and you would be negligent
That's
if
true.
you didn't
That's true.
watch it. So here's some numbers for you here.
Okay.
Yesterday's Women's National Championship averaged 14.2 million viewers. That's a big, big number.
Huge.
And in 2023, the Men's National Championship game scored 14.7 million viewers. UConn versus San Diego State. It is true that national championship viewership is falling off. Just a few years ago, they were up in the 20+ million viewers. Last year, it was down to 14.7 million viewers. But I believe that the dogfight between Zach Edey and Purdue and UConn going for back-to-back national championships, I think the men will edge them out with a 15.5 million viewer number.
71307 is the text line. Get those text in now. Again, that's 71307. Start your text with fan. I think that it'll be close, Diesel. And I like what you said about the championship numbers going down year by year.
Yep.
That is very interesting.
That's what makes this really interesting.
And it could be, man, it could be close. Like it could be, wouldn't it be cool if it was in the same millions?
Yeah.
That could happen, though, man.
That would really signify huge growth for women's college basketball. This is what makes this so interesting. The most recent data we have from last year, 14.7 million for the men, 14.2 million for yesterday's game with the women's national championship. I think the men, though, will edge them out. It's time for the next round.
Round 2, fight.
Will we ever see another Caitlin Clark? Will we see another one? It's been 50 years since we've had somebody set the NCAA scoring record. I say no. I think Caitlin Clark is a phenom. She's a phenomenon who came on at the exact right time, much in the way that Tiger Woods did for golf. Look, there are stars in golf today, but none are as dominant, as marketable, or as newsworthy as Tiger Woods. Caitlin Clark captured our collective conscience in a way that I don't think anyone will ever do again. And here's an uncomfortable truth here for you, Cole.
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing that I probably shouldn't say out loud, but I'm gonna. Caitlin Clark is the most marketable star that women's college basketball has ever seen because she's a white girl.
Oh, wow.
Paul Pierce said it himself last week. We had the audio. He said Caitlin Clark gained his respect because she's a white girl and she's whooping up on black girls. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying it's a social truth. Tiger Woods, much like OJ before him, was a black guy who dominated in a mostly white sport. And it made him marketable at the right time. And I don't think we'll ever see somebody like Caitlin Clark capture this level of attention again.
So I'll say this. So I don't contradict what I said earlier in the program. I do not think we'll see a talent like Caitlin Clark. However, when it comes to marketability and someone who can take the game over by storm with their personality, their following, whatever school they go to, Diesel, I do think that in the next, I don't know if it'll be 10 or 20 years, we will see a star that is more marketable in terms of what we saw from Caitlin Clark, because I don't believe Caitlin Clark was the most marketable star. She didn't have the outgoing. I don't want to say she wasn't outgoing. She didn't have the big personality that a lot of stars have. So in terms of the marketing and what a star could do for the game, I do think we will see another star from that aspect.
All right, give us your votes. Text in 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. Who won round one? Who won round two? If you're on the fence, we got to go one more as a tiebreaker. Here we go.
Final round. Fight.
This might be the most contentious of all the fights that we've ever done on this segment. What is the better condiment? Mayonnaise or ranch? Mayonnaise v. ranch in an all-out slugfest. Who you got?
So I'm going to take ranch, and I'll tell you why. Ranch is the best condiment in terms of taste, adding to a food, right? If you want fries and homemade ranch, it makes the fries better. As I said last week, I love pizza and ranch. I love ranch on a lot of different things. Now, I don't want to act like I don't love mayonnaise, because I do love mayonnaise. However, let me tell you why ranch is better than mayonnaise. There's mayonnaise in ranch. So I'll go ranch. And even as I say this, I'm starting to get hungry, Diesel, but I'll say ranch is the better condiment.
Well, all the best foods have mayonnaise in it. Alabama white sauce, Chinese restaurant white sauce. You said it yourself. Ranch dressing has mayonnaise in it. So without mayo, ranch would be garbage. It's in everything that we love to eat here in the South. It's in potato salad. It's in chicken salad. It's in pimento cheese. It's in deviled eggs. It's in Mexican street corn.
Yep.
I love Mexican street corn.
I do too.
And it's the way better way to coat your grilled cheese sandwiches when you cook them in a frying pan.
True.
You have to put mayonnaise on the outside. Butter is fine if that's all you got, but mayonnaise is better. Mayonnaise is the GOAT, whether it's by itself just on a BLT or you put it as a base ingredient to make something else. That's what makes mayo the GOAT.
A lot of good conversation. Trey says, going back to round two, obviously the men's won't get the numbers because of it's a Monday Night Raw after WrestleMania. JD says, Shaq already said Fool Wiley from South Carolina looks like the most dynamic woman player. And then JD also says Cole wins today. I think he owes me that one. So JD sides with me. I don't know if it's a clean sweep from JD, but get your thoughts in on the stream if you're watching Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook, as well as the text line.
Cole already won round one because he said he would refuse to watch just so that he could be right for a 5 o'clock fight. That is dedication, says the texter. We want your results. We want you to weigh in. We can't decide. You have to decide. You're the judge. Your Judge Judy. Please text into the show, 71307. Start your text with Fan 1. Tell us who won each round of today's 5 o'clock fight.
What do you want Diesel and Cole Bryson to fight about next?
If you've got an ass, I'll kick it.
Submit your topics to diesel@thefanupstate.com. Subject line, fight on the Fan Upstate.
That's right. We appreciate JD for submitting a handful of 5 o'clock fight ideas to this point. We want you to do the same thing. Email me, diesel@thefanupstate.com. Put the word fight in the subject line, and we will fight about it.
Anything,
fight
man.
about anything, so long as it's not 4-letter words that we can't say.
We've had some interesting fights so far.
Yeah.
Some really good, some to do with sports, some not to do with sports. Really interesting. I like the conversation today, though, the fights today, especially the ranch mayonnaise, but the Caitlin Clark, if we'll ever see another Caitlin Clark, I think that's a fascinating discussion. And you know what, Diesel, we will continue on sports radio, on TV, on you name it, sports show. We will continue to have that conversation until it happens.
Yeah.
And it may be a long, long time, but we're going to keep having that conversation on if we'll ever see another Caitlin
Well, the
Clark.
beautiful thing, I think, about the way coverage of women's basketball will shift in the future, it won't be, look how big this event is. Isn't it great that all these celebrities are paying attention? That will just be a part of it. That's like, it'll be a given, taken for granted part of the game, and we'll really start parsing the talent of these ladies playing the game. So I think the coverage of the game will change and reflect more of the coverage that we see in the men's game. And I think that'll be the sport will be better for it.
Madcraft says Cole 1, Cole 2, and Diesel 3. So he does go with you on the mayonnaise. Diesel, another texter, says the main ingredient in homemade ranch is mayonnaise. Therefore, I hate to say it, mayonnaise is dominant. I did point that out. It's hard to disagree. Again, I did not say I don't like mayonnaise. I do love mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise is ranch's daddy.
It's the best, man. It's the best in terms of if you want a chicken sandwich, you got to have mayonnaise. You want a good sandwich from Chick-fil-A, you got to have mayonnaise, but I do love me some ranch.
It grosses my wife out that I put mayo on everything.
Yeah, you got to have.
I don't understand this.
So
we went out for breakfast the other day, and I got a sausage, egg, and cheese bagel, and I asked her to have them put mayonnaise on it.
Sure.
She's like, I won't do that. I'll get you a mayonnaise packet. You can do it, but I'm not going to have them sully this thing.
So
it wasn't Sully's, by the way.
I agree with that. I think that is great that you did that. The thing that grosses everyone out that I do is you referenced it in the Mexican street corn. When I eat corn on the cob at anyone's house, any event, any cookout, and I lather my corn with mayonnaise instead of butter, I get looked at like I'm a terrorist. I mean, I really do, man. But you're right. Mexican street corn, if you know, that's where that comes from. A lot of people do it in a cup with the corn cut off the cob. I had that a lot when I was in Texas. That was really popular. The corn was already cut off the cob, and you mix the mayonnaise and paprika and other stuff in it, Diesel. But mayonnaise on corn is probably one of the most underrated things in life.
Do they put mayonnaise in poutine gravy? It's a Canadian dish it's French fries and cheese curds. Which
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Both are delicious. And then they cover it in like a brown gravy. And I got to assume there's some mayonnaise in there.
Never heard of it.
It looks fantastic.
Never heard of it.
Have you ever been somewhere that serves you like French fries with like a white sauce or a bolognese
Sure.
sauce?
There's a place in Greenville that does that downtown.
That is.
Gotcha. Now, going back to the text line, one texter says mayo or ranch on a hot dog. That comes from Bo. I don't do that. No. I would never put ranch on a hot dog, but Bo. I don't think mayo would be the worst thing in the world on a hot dog.
I don't think it'd be the worst, but it's the wrong thing. It's the wrong thing. Okay. Like, do you remember when you were homesick from school and you would watch like the Modern Marvels shows
Sure.
or the History of Food shows or things that were on middle of the day when you were homesick from school? I remember something that stuck out to me, and like people have argued this ever since, but the truth is a hot dog, number one, a hot dog is a sandwich because it's sausage wrapped in bread. That makes it a sandwich. Okay. Second of all, you put mustard on sausage. The German way of eating any sausage is you got to put mustard on. So hot dogs don't, like, everybody's trying to way overcomplicate the hot dog. It doesn't need to have that many things on it.
I think the more the better on a hot dog.
First of all, the best possible hot dog is a Carolina chili cheese dog, which is mustard, chili, cheese, onions, slaw. You don't need anything else.
That's
in
a
it.
lot.
But like people treat it like it's a damn Bloody Mary where they're putting all this stuff on top of it. You don't need all that stuff.
Crab legs.
Keep it
No
simple,
crab.
stupid.
No
Keep it
tomatoes.
simple, stupid. No tomatoes. You shouldn't even be putting ketchup on a hot dog.
Oh, see, I disagree with that.
10 years old.
I love ketchup on a hot dog. You got to have ketchup. That's a great 5 o'clock fight. We appreciate you being a part of it. Anytime we bring up something that has food in it, it gets a big reaction. All right, coming up next in the program, Diesel and I are going to get back to it. Yesterday, South Carolina, the Gamecocks won their third national championship in women's basketball. A spectacular game. Caitlin Clark was really good in the first quarter. I hate to say it, she kind of went MIA after the first quarter. She, in my opinion, played a little bit of hero ball that may have cost her. We'll talk about that coming up. He's Diesel. I am Cole Bryson, and this is the Fan Upstate. The South Carolina Gamecocks, for the third time, Dawn Staley has done it again. National champions, they had a heck of a celebration at Colonial Life Arena today as it was packed. They welcomed the team, the community, the fan base, the students. The crowd that I saw on Twitter, Diesel, was unbelievable. How many people showed up today in the middle of a Monday to celebrate and welcome home their women Lady Gamecocks? It was incredible, man. It really was.
Yeah, it's you love to see the culture of a program building like that, because that's how you sustain it year over year over year. And Dawn Staley, look, all of this stuff, all of this is recruiting fodder. All of it. Like, it's
kidding me?
It's tough to do what they had to do last year, which was replace all 5 starters. But things like this are the reason why you get the best of the best recruits, and you can add pieces via the portal.
So I'll backtrack on this segment, Diesel. The first segment of the show, we talked about South Carolina's win yesterday against Iowa. This time I'll backtrack and kind of start from the end of the game. Caitlin Clark deserves to have the ball in her hands, okay? However, down the stretch, I did feel as if a little bit of hero ball kicked in. She started jacking up shots, didn't really get her team involved. And I'll be honest with you, I think that started when South Carolina changed the pace of play. When South Carolina changed the pace of play and Caitlin Clark had to start playing in a different pace, playing in a different rhythm, is when I thought that she really started taking some errant shots, just jacking shots up, right? Her teammates are nowhere as good as she is. I'm not saying that she should have passed the ball every time down the floor. However, when you're trailing a team like South Carolina, Diesel, and the shots aren't falling and you have 12 points in 3 quarters, I'm not so sure that running down the floor and just jacking them up is the best plan for winning.
Look, I mean, that's the sign of somebody who has supreme confidence in themselves.
You're right.
And that's a great thing to have. And if it was the other way around, Cole, I know we would look at this and say, well, why wasn't she shooting the ball? Why,
we may
she's
have
the best player on the team.
Yeah.
Why isn't she shooting the ball? I mean, you look around to her teammates. This blows me away. Not a single point was scored by a bench player for Iowa.
That's not good
in that game. Compare that to the 37 that were scored by South Carolina's bench.
Unreal, man.
37-0 off the bench. Kate Martin, she had 16 in that game. Sydney Affolter, I don't know how to say her last name. She scored 12 in the game. Gabby Marshall had 6 in that game. So, I mean, it's the Caitlin Clark show at Iowa. It always has been. It has been the last couple of seasons, and they were gonna live by it or die by it. I mean, we've seen her have so many phenomenal performances, and who knows, like when you have a rough second quarter, if you just turn it on midway through the third quarter, who knows? But there were times when she was just missing shots that she makes. I mean, it's hard to say this about somebody who put up 30. I mean, she had a phenomenal night.
18 of those 30 were in the first, and that's a lot. That was her career high first quarter points, 18 points. Now, a lot of that has to do with Bree Hall for South Carolina was guarding Caitlin Clark in the first. Dawn Staley, and I'd love to ask Dawn this question. I didn't hear anyone else ask her this in the million interviews she did after the game, but for whatever reason, she started Bree Hall on Caitlin Clark to start the game. I think that she may look back and think, man, if I would have started Raven Johnson on her as the primary defender the entire game, we may have shut Caitlin Clark down. And Diesel, they may have, because she only scored 12 points, 6 points really when Raven Johnson was guarding her one-on-one. The other 6 points came from screens where there was a switch that took place, and she had 12 points again in the last 3 quarters. 2, 3, and 4 did Caitlin Clark. She also had 4 turnovers when Raven Johnson was guarding her. You mentioned it being the Caitlin Clark show. I 100% agree with you. I felt like going into the game, the conversation, the people that I was talking to, everybody was worried. Diesel, everybody said, "Oh, I'm worried about Caitlin. I'm worried that Caitlin might just in the season, in the perfect season for the Gamecocks. I'll say this. I wasn't worried before the game. Now, when Iowa went up on that huge run, I did get worried then. But before the game, I felt confident in South Carolina's bench, their coach, their depth, and Camelia Cardoso, who was, in my opinion, the rock for that basketball team all season long. She absolutely was dominant on the boards again last night. 17 rebounds, 15 points. It's so hard, Diesel, to stop her. I think a lot of times in basketball, last night was a great example of this. I think a lot of times in basketball, coaches overcomplicate things. Like last night's game plan, Diesel, was very simple. Get her the ball and allow double teams to take place, because you saw when Camelia Cardoso got the ball, there were a couple of double teams, a couple of times there were triple teams. And then you have your 4 shooters on the perimeter, and that was the game plan in the second half, man.
Yeah, well, I mean, just South Carolina's depth is what won them 38 games this season. I mean, you look at their starting 5. Kitts had 11, Cardoso had 15, Pow 14 points. Hall and Johnson combined for 10, but they had depth across the bench as well. Tessa Johnson, she scored 17 points in the game, and you can't key in on 19 points. You can't key in on one player for South Carolina, and that's what makes them so dangerous. You called what was the word you used to describe Cardoso?
Just a rock.
She's not a rock. She's a mountain. She's 6'7". She's enormous.
Yeah.
And so when you have a player like that, that's like having Zach Edey on your team, a guy who's 7'4". You know, Cardoso being 6'7". It's incredible what they were able to accomplish. You know, we talked about the last 2 games where they didn't play their best ball down the stretch. Third and fourth quarter was really a big sticking point for South Carolina. It's odd that it happened early. Maybe Caitlin was just really super dialed in for the first quarter of that game. And then you're right, the switch there to put Raven Johnson on her just changed something and really affected Caitlin Clark in a way that allowed South Carolina's depth to come back and take over the game. And then you said it down the stretch, late in the third quarter, fourth quarter, South Carolina was able to slow the game down and essentially play keep away. They won 3 out of the 4 quarters of that game. Iowa put up 27 in the first quarter to South Carolina's 20. But beyond that, South Carolina outscored them in the second, third, and fourth quarters of that game. I felt like they just sort of wore them down, and you got into the third and fourth quarters. Iowa made their big comeback, and they ran out of energy.
One thing that we haven't discussed and that we do need to give a ton of credit to, South Carolina's makeup of a team, not their makeup on their face, the makeup of the team. When you talk about great teams, whether it be football teams, basketball teams, or baseball teams, Diesel, every coach will tell you got to have good chemistry. You got to have a good makeup of the team, right? You got to have good team DNA. What stood out to me that I look back on from yesterday's game, talking about South Carolina, Iowa, a team like South Carolina can get down in the first quarter as big as they were, as much as a deficit as that was, as little faith as a lot of people had in South Carolina after that first quarter yesterday. Guess what South Carolina didn't do? Dawn Staley didn't panic. Camelia Cardoso didn't panic. Nobody on that team. Raven Johnson sure as heck didn't panic. She called it the revenge tour game because she did allow last year Caitlin Clark to go off in the game where Iowa beat South Carolina. There was no panic from South Carolina. So when we talk about this team, and as great as they are, and for all the attention that they garner, and every bit of it rightfully so, Diesel, I think to me one of the most impressive traits is they got down double digits in the first quarter of a national championship game and didn't even blink.
No.
They didn't blink, man.
They didn't. And, you know, Dawn Staley multiple times has commented on how much faith she and the rest of the team have in the freshmen on this team. And man, I was blown away in the post-game interview with Tessa Johnson, who's a freshman, by the way.
Sure.
Who she gets on television. Now, Tahina Powpow, I think she did the first interview. She was fantastic.
She was, man.
She's just incredible on the microphone. But Tessa Johnson, as a freshman, she was poised, she was focused, she was locked in. She looked like she was ready to go play another game. And I'm telling you, South Carolina fans, get used to this feeling, because with the team you've got, with Ashlyn Watkins coming back, with Tessa Johnson coming back, with Malaysia Fulwiley coming back, you have a lot of pieces in place to make another run. Raven Johnson is just a sophomore. Bree Hall is a junior. You're going to get Chloe Kitts back.
She was great last night.
Yes, she was.
I'll tell you this, Diesel. A friend of mine who's a huge South Carolina fan called me this morning. And you know the question he asked me, and this was something that I hadn't really thought a ton about, and a very good point before we hit a break. South Carolina friend of mine, a Gamecock fan, called me this morning and said the question that he would like to ask Dawn Staley is, with all of this talent, Diesel, on this roster, top to bottom, so many talented players, how does she keep every single player happy? They're all unselfish. Yep. There's a great culture. There's no me. Last night, yesterday, when you watch South Carolina, if you want a picture-perfect example of what a team is, that's it, man. I don't know the answer how she keeps everyone happy, but it's just part of the culture.
I don't know how any coach does this. I mean, how do you look at somebody in the face whose primary objective is to either make money in NIL, transfer somewhere else so they can get more money in NIL, or get to the pro leagues where they can make even more money? How do you look at that person in the face and say, look, it's going to feel good to go out there and get your shots and score 20 points tonight, but imagine how much better it's going to feel when you're hoisting a trophy at the end of the year. Like, how do you get into somebody's head? How do you get through to a generation who everybody thinks is a selfish, me first generation? How do you get through to them and say, raising trophies is so much more fun than reading stat sheets?
Listen, man, you're right. Because at the end of the day, we talked about it earlier in the first segment of the program. I saw it on Twitter, social media yesterday. If you want to win championships, you go to South Carolina women's basketball. If you want to rack up your stats, you go wherever you want to go. But Dawn Staley, the culture that she's created has been phenomenal. And real quick, but Diesel, before we send it to break, I do want to remind our audience that tonight's championship game that we'll get into, the national championship game, it may be late tonight. It may be, as Madcraft pointed out, pretty close to midnight, right? It feels like. But we will have coverage of that game exclusively on the Fan Upstate.
Texter says, y'all are doing a great job. Well, we appreciate that, Texter.
Thanks, Texter.
Bryson and I think, are having a fantastic time doing this show. We love having you guys listening to the show. We love the Tolos texting in. We love the Tolos who are on the live chat.
What's Tolo mean, Diesel?
It means turn on, leave on. It means at 3 o'clock when the show starts, you flip on the radio, and it means you listen all the way until the end, all the way until 7 o'clock, whether you listen on the stream, whether you listen on the over-the-air, however you listen, we appreciate that. Texter asks, how long until Haley Van Leith announces she's transferring to South Carolina? Well, if she wants to win titles, that would be a smart move. When we come back, the man sitting across from me, Cole Bryson, was in Clemson over the weekend. He saw everything firsthand, but did he see anything that concerned him? Cole's takes on Clemson's spring game next here on the Fan Upstate.
want to remind you that Wednesday, 2 days from today, Diesel and I will be live on location at Ingalls on Gear Highway in Travelers Rest. We want you, the Tolos, to come out and be a part of the program, as whenever we're at Ingalls, we so much appreciate Ingalls making it the best show ever on remote. But we also want you to drop by if you have time, if you're in the area. If you're over near TR on Wednesday, come see Diesel and I. We'll be there 3 to 7. Diesel might even give you a high five. Who knows? Or a hug.
I might even take a shower before we do this.
Oh, that would be a good thing to do. Your weekly shower. Be a good idea.
Once every 7 days, whether I need it or not.
So as you tease coming into break, I did go to the spring game on Saturday. And boy, oh boy, where do I start? The number one thing I do want to reiterate, the number one point that I want to hit is that this is a spring game. It's a glorified scrimmage. So anything that I say, remember, I'm not seeing this from a real game, a real live game. However, there are things from a spring game that you can take away, right? You kind of have to be careful and find the right balance of seeing what actually took place and not overreacting, because
it's kind of an art to learn what to look for in a spring game, because you don't necessarily look for the same things that you would in a live game.
So I'll tell you a quick story to start. We were walking down to the media room, and a media member asked me, they said, Cole, what do you think the attendance was? Because we never got an announcement in the press box or anything like that. And I guessed, I said 24,000, something like that. And I'm not going to say who the other media members were, but the other media members that we were with said, man, that's pushing it. I'd say more like 15 to 20, right? So we get down to the media room, and we're waiting on Dabo and Cade and some other players and Trent Pierman, and we hadn't heard anything yet. Well, a couple of the SIDs were coming in giving instructions. So as one of them was leaving the room, I said, hey, what was the attendance? And he told me the attendance, and when he told me, he thought that I didn't understand him because I was in such shock. He looked at me, the SID looked at me and said 47,000. And I believe I stuttered. I believe I do what? And he said, is that what you asked was attendance? And I said, yeah, I asked for the attendance, but I just didn't believe. Like,
what's the real number?
47,000. I guess 15, 20.
Isn't that basically what they announced last year? Didn't they announce?
Probably
I
so.
think they announced 50,000 last year. And then South Carolina announced 50,100 a few nights later.
So I looked over when the SID told me that. I looked over at another media member, and we were just like, wow, okay, whatever you say, it was a big number. Now, the question is, I don't know how they even count attendance at spring games.
Yeah.
My guess is they look at the lower bowl and say, okay, the lower bowl holds 60,000 or whatever it is, 50,000. I don't know if this is true or not, but there's no tickets. There's no way for them to count entries. So they may look at the lower bowl and say, okay, it looks like it's almost full. So we'll call it 43, 47, whatever. They called it 47 Saturday, which was generous. I do not think there was 47,000 people there. However, about the game, Diesel, first play of the game, scrimmage. First play of scrimmage. Cade Klubnik takes the snap, drops back. Freshman linebacker Sammy Brown, who is a highly touted freshman, who's going to be very, very good for Clemson, comes in and just busts the play up. And Cade, I believe Cade threw the ball and it hit one of the linemen. And you know how sometimes a ball bounces weird and it just flies up in the air? There were not any boos, but the very first play that happened, and there was an overwhelming, oh.
Here we go again.
I'm not kidding, man. I'm not kidding.
Is there a quarterback? When was the last time Clemson fans had less faith in their starting quarterback?
Cole Stout, maybe.
Yeah. Woody Dantzler.
God. It's bad. That's bad. So the game started, right? The game goes on. Cade doesn't really look impressive. Vizina doesn't really look impressive. Third string quarterback comes in, and he's on, they have them split. So they're getting a good many reps, all three quarterbacks. Trent Pierman, the kid that I've watched for several years right here in our backyard at Daniel High School, right? He comes in, and he absolutely just lights it up. Diesel throwing the ball on time, hitting his targets, stepping up in the pocket. Oh, by the way, he can run the ball. He took off for a 49-yard touchdown. He was phenomenal. So David Hood, who we had on the program last week, at halftime, David and I walked down to the little indoor area of the press box. And David looked at me and said, you know, people who have been covering Clemson this spring said that Trent Pierman was the best quarterback on the roster. And I looked at him and I said, do you believe that? And he said, yeah, I mean, he's playing better than anybody right now, right? So not to overreact, but Trent Pierman, QB3, played an absolute incredible game Saturday. Cade Klubnik threw one interception, should have thrown two. One got dropped by Terrell Johnson. And there were a couple of plays, I say couple, probably like 10 plays, Diesel, where you kind of just shook your head and thought, what was he doing there? Like we talked about.
And that was the conversation we had with David Hood a week ago.
Correct.
Tell us what you think about Cade in his spring practice. And he said, oh, well, previously when you'd get 10 to 15 plays every game where you'd shake your head and say, what are you doing, Cole? That's going to be reduced to 2 or 3. And we're like, is it really?
It was probably 8 to 10.
Yeah.
If I had to be fair.
I mean, we've seen Dabo show the stubbornness to not move on from a quarterback when he should.
Sure.
We've also seen Dabo make a quarterback change mid-season. You know, we saw it with Kelly Bryant and DJ, and then DJ to Cade. Are we going to see it with Cade? Are they going to skip over Christopher Vizina and go to Trent Pierman?
I don't think they'll skip over him. Here's what I'll say this. With it being April, Diesel, I do think Cade Klubnik has a lot of talent. I think it's there. However, sure, for whatever reason, it has not translated to consistency in his game. I asked Dabo post-game, and again, I'm not trying to read into Dabo's words, but, you know, if I ask you a question like I gave Rob Brown this morning, a great example, I said, look out the window, is the sky blue? You're going to answer, yes. You're not going to say, it was blue last time I checked, right? You're going to give an affirmative yes. So I asked Dabo Swinney after the game, you take it for what it's worth. I said, do you feel like you saw another step from Cade today? And here was Dabo's response. You feel like you saw another step from him today, from Klubnik? What was that? Was that a yes? Diesel, did you hear a yes?
I heard it.
Let me play it back again. Maybe I tried to hear a yes. Let's try one more time. Another step from him today, from Klubnik? Was that a yes? Definitely not a yes.
Not a yes.
So here's Dabo's full response. You feel like you saw another step from him today, from Klubnik?
I saw another step from him all spring. You know, it's a lot more than just today. I thought he did a good job today. You know, just put some good drives together, made some good decisions. Some that maybe didn't appear to be a good decision, maybe it's just a simple play, but it's a great decision as a coach when you're evaluating certain things, when there's situationally some things that he did. You know, so I'm proud of him. He's been really, really good all spring. He's been really good. So we're just getting better and better and better.
So that was on a yes.
I gotta laugh out of that because midway through his answer, somebody in the background, who knows who it was, who knows what they were talking about, with a well-timed, I don't know about that. And that was funny. That made me laugh. And
so
then what we also got there was more of what we got from last offseason about Cade Klubnik. You know, it was he's given us plenty of opportunities to coach him up. Isn't that good? Like, he made the mistake, and now we get a chance to coach him off of that mistake.
Again, I don't want people to think I'm overreacting. However, you do believe your eye test, right? You do believe what those two eyes see. And what the two eyes saw was that Cade wasn't the best quarterback on the field Saturday. Does that mean Cade will not be good this season? Absolutely not. He could have a great year, man. He could. He could put it together. But we're going off of what we saw Saturday. David Hood agreed. People I talked to agreed. So here's what's fascinating, Diesel. I put a poll right after the game ended on Twitter. thefanupstate.com, @thefanupstate on Twitter. And the poll was, hey, Clemson fans, after what you saw in today's spring game, how are you now feeling about QB1? The options were worse, same, or optimistic, actually. 50% of the results said worse.
Oh.
38% said same.
Oh.
That leaves 12% for optimistic, actually.
I will tell you this. As somebody who doesn't consider himself a Clemson fan.
Sure.
As an App State fan who plays Clemson in week 2 of the season,
Mhm.
I am excited about the prospect that Cade Klubnik will still be QB1 at the time.
That's terrible.
If that tells you anything.
Yeah, so you're saying there's a chance.
I'm telling you, I feel pretty good about Cade's lack of ability to beat us.
I want to be very clear, and we'll get to a lot of these texts coming up in the next segment. He could have a great summer and fall camp.
Lots of time.
There's a lot of time. One texter said, I think it's important to consider about the spring game as Pierman was likely throwing to receivers he has in practice since our biggest guy. Not sure really what the texter meant there. Another texter says, in general, a quarterback in a spring game should have full control of the offense and minimal mistakes. Everything is vanilla. Yes, that's true. The play calling is vanilla, but you still got to make your reads. You still got to throw it to the orange guys, not the white guys, right? But if you put someone in place to succeed over and over and they fail, it becomes a problem. And at some point, there needs to be a change. Another Tolo says, haha, that sounded like my man denying cheating with a spider like a couple years ago. I don't know what that means either. Some of these texts are just a little bit confusing. But we appreciate you texting in. If you have a confusing text that I'm struggling to understand, hey, do this. Pick up the phone. Give us a call. 844-FAN phone is the way to get in touch with the program.
When we come back, it's pretty clear that South Carolina women's basketball is a dynasty. But the question is, do we collectively, all sports fans, do we actually still love dynasties, or do we really want parity? That's next here on Wire to Wire. The South Carolina Lady Gamecocks get it done again. They win their second national championship in 3 seasons under Dawn Staley. You can't deny that they're a dynasty. They are absolutely a dynasty. 2020 Sweet 16, 2021 Final Four, 2022 national champions, 2023 Final Four, 2024 national champions. Dawn Staley sits atop the sport. Nobody can touch her. But the question is, do we really actually love dynasties?
Ooh.
Or do we really love parity more? I feel like
question.
this is one of those conversations, Cole, that when you've got a dynasty, everybody says, ooh, we really like parity. But when you've got parity,
Yes.
people say, wouldn't it be great if we had a really dominant team that could give us storylines to talk about?
It's true.
Year in and year out.
You're right.
I mean, it's a fascinating question. It's like when you've got A, people want B. When you got B, people want A. So the question is, and is it a sport by sport discussion? I mean, would we rather have dynasties in women's basketball, but have parity in men's basketball or football? I mean, I think it's a really interesting conversation to have. And we would love to get your thoughts. 844-FAN-PHONE. That's 844-326-3663. The renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone line. You can also text in 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. But what say you?
The obvious answer, Diesel, is if you are a fan of the dynasty, of course you love dynasties, right? Yes. If you're a Clemson fan that lived from 2014, 15 to 19, you love dynasties. If you're an Alabama fan, you love dynasties. But it is a great question. And I think you're onto something. I think it is probably more sport to sport.
So before we even get there, I do want you need to answer this question.
Okay.
Is South Carolina and what they've achieved on paper a true, unquestionable dynasty? 2016, you made the Sweet 16, didn't advance any further. That is not dynasty material. It's a good season, but it's not dynasty material. When you go back just the last 4 seasons, you got 2 Final Four appearances and 2 national championships. If that's not a dynasty, it's the closest thing you can get to being a dynasty without being one yet. But I knew that I was going to light up the Angry Birds if I said South Carolina women's basketball is not a dynasty. Because you have shown over the past 4 straight seasons, 5, if you count the Sweet 16 as like the buildup, the lead into a dynasty. But would you consider that a true dynasty?
110%. It is a dynasty.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're established there that we both believe South Carolina is in a dynasty. You win another one, you make a Final Four appearance or a national championship appearance. I mean, you're solidified. You're in the same conversation as Pat Summitt and Gino Auriemma.
Yeah.
As if you're. I mean, you're.
I think she already is.
There. You're on the way there, and yeah.
Listen to this. Dawn Staley, the last 3 seasons, 109-3.
Oh my God.
The last 3 seasons, 109-3 is her freaking record. 4 straight Final Fours and 2 championships in 3 years.
The question, next question is, what result ends a dynasty? I mean, like,
say that again.
What result would let's just say, let's use South Carolina as an example. What result in 2024-25 results in this is the end of a dynasty? Not making the tournament
for South Carolina.
Ooh. Not making it at all. I mean, if you didn't make it at all, you had a pretty rough season. And let's say, okay, that ends the dynasty. Okay. Let's say you make the tournament, but you fail to advance out of the round of 64. Does that end your dynasty?
If you don't make the tournament, something's happened.
Yeah.
Dawn Staley
the wheels have fallen off.
Maybe if you tell me next season they don't make the tournament, I tell you Dawn Staley's in the WNBA coaching. All of the recruits left, and they canceled the program.
They canceled the program. Yeah.
But Yeah, you'd have to probably not make the tournament.
So not making it ends the dynasty.
Not making
does making the round of 64 but not advancing end the dynasty.
I don't think it ends
Like,
it, man.
It just ends it. Like, it doesn't matter what happens
Next year.
26, 27, but what happens in 24, 25, or excuse me, 25, 26. What happens in 24, 25 would end the dynasty if you made the tournament but didn't advance.
I don't think it would end it getting booted in the first round next year.
You got Purdue in the first round.
Or Calipari.
Calipari.
In the first round.
They got fried.
Yes.
He took, yeah.
I do think, though, like, whenever you talk about a dynasty ending in 1 year, I want to see what that team does the next year, right? Because if you told me they got booted in the first round next year, and then you told me the next year they got booted in the first round,
it's over.
Then I'd say this thing might be something drastic's happened. Now, I don't see any of that happening, but
of course
not. That could be, to answer your question, that could be 2 consistent years of it, something that would be wrong.
Like we love, as American sports fans, we love dynasties. We love to see somebody have sustained excellence, right? We loved watching Alabama do it for a couple of years, and then we got tired of Alabama doing it, right? We always go there. We always enjoy the build up to a dynasty. Like everybody, you're Luke Skywalker up until the point you're Darth Vader, right? People love it, hate it.
Sure.
They just get tired of seeing the same
Patriots.
team win it. The Patriots
Bama.
doing it. Yeah. I mean, you go back to 2014, which is the start of the college football playoff era.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama won it in 2015, in 2017, and in 2020. That's a dynasty. It is. You won 3 out of 5. You got Georgia, who won back-to-back in 2021 and 2022. Clemson, who won 2 out of 3 seasons. I mean, we look at dynasties as if there can only be one at a time. But the truth is there can be multiple at a time.
Sure.
I mean, can there? Is that true? Like, I think of dynasty as a ruling class, ruling family of an ancient civilization. The Egyptians were dynasties.
Mm-hmm.
The Chinese had dynasties. But like, can there be 2 dynasties in the same sport at the same time?
I think there can be 2 dynasties in an era. Like if you classify an era from 2010 to 2020, yeah, I think you could have 2 dynasties. But it's hard to have 2 in a short period of time, right?
JD makes a good point here. He says it's totally different in women's and men's sports. So much easier in women's. There have been 10 undefeated national champions in women's college basketball. There have been 7 in the men's, but there hasn't been one since 1975 in the men's. Let that sink in. In 50 years, we have not had an undefeated men's national champion, which means there's a lot more parity.
There is
in men's college basketball. The game is completely different. The women's game, these ladies stay in the sport until they're seniors, and then they go off to the WNBA or do whatever they do with the rest of their lives. But in the men's, I think we would have a lot more dynasties and dominance in college basketball if these guys stuck around until their junior and senior year, but they don't want to do that.
No,
they want to
especially not in Kentucky.
Off and make their money. Right. I mean, could you imagine how good Kentucky could be with all of their resources and their fan support and all that stuff if they could just keep a couple of guys in the program until they were seniors?
One texter says the thing about Dawn is, and I'm biased clearly, but I think an objective person could agree she has lost enough when she should have won. Another texter says, I think it's 3 titles in 5 years for a dynasty, but what Dawn has built without question is great.
So she wins another one next year. That's unequivocally a dynasty.
In their opinion.
That's okay.
In a tournament of 64, I mean, she is close. Another Tolo says, this is the convo we need to have. This is a different level. There's a different level. That's one you just read. As long as Dawn is at South Carolina, there will always be a dynasty. Think of coaches like Ariema, Summit, women's sports is so much easier to be dynastic. One text that just came in said, don't forget about the biggest dynasty of them all, Joey Chestnut and the hot dog eating contest. How about that? Throwing some truth bombs out there on a Monday. If you're going to tell me, I'm going to have a hard time agreeing with anyone right now that tells me that South Carolina's not a dynasty yet.
You're hating at this point. If you
I think so, man. I think so. Like 71307 is the text line. Phone lines are 844-326-3663. I don't know that anyone can sit here and convince me today that this is not a dynasty.
The only thing that keeps this from feeling like a dynasty right now is just that none of the media attention has been on South Carolina all season.
Because of
Caitlin Clark.
Correct.
I mean, right? It feels like if you're going to be a dynasty, you need to be the media darlings. You need to have all the attention. And they certainly didn't. They deserved it, but they didn't get it because all of the media was focused somewhere else.
I think that they were the media darlings before Caitlin Clark arrived. And you're right. Ever since she arrived on the scene, South Carolina hasn't garnered as much attention. As I told you this morning, I was at a place where the TVs were on, and the headlines, the first story on ESPN was, how does college basketball survive? It wasn't Carolina that, it's this
and it's
huge,
a damn shame.
It is. It's a huge narrative of, then if you listened and watched the game yesterday, I'm not sitting there saying that things are rigged or anything. I'm not a conspiracist. I'm not trying to make too much of this, Diesel, but I'm telling you with my eyes, there were some fouls that I saw on Caitlin Clark yesterday and I thought, what in the world? The one where she shot a three-point basket and got – I just thought it was some ticky-tacky fouls. I tweeted out yesterday during the game, for goodness sake, you blow on Caitlin Clark, you breathe on her, and she just gets a foul call, right? It's just ridiculous.
Want to put her on the line and let her pad her stats by getting the free throws. And they do it with so many guys. Zach Edey is the same thing. He gets those calls.
I'll say this to answer your question. Diesel, do not think people love dynasties more than they love parity. I think people love parity more because it keeps the sport relevant in a way of cycling new teams in, allowing new teams to be at the forefront. Now, I don't think a dynasty hurts sports at all. I think what South Carolina has done for the game of women's basketball has been incredible, but I'm just saying in terms of fans.
Yeah.
Like fans pull for their team, right?
Fans love parity because they want to feel like their team has a chance to win it any year.
Sure.
Like if you're an Auburn fan, you feel like if the stars align, we can win a title in football this year. If you are an Oregon fan, you can feel like if the stars align, we have a chance to win this thing. Versus when you have a dynasty and you've got this big bad dun, 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 dun. You got Darth Vader in Alabama down there just winning every single game. I mean, I think dynasties are good for the casual fans.
Sure.
Because the casual fan needs this overarching storyline to become the crux of the
sport. Pull them in.
Yeah.
A texter says on the text line 71307, you guys are blowing it up, so I'm having to go down to read all of them. And that's why Dawn was so emotional, says one texter. She knew it meant more to the sport for her winning than Caitlin Clark, who would be gone. I don't necessarily disagree with that.
Dawn Staley did have something. I know you want to get some more of these texts. She had a fantastic tribute to Caitlin Clark. In her post game, like the confetti was still falling from the sky, and Dawn recognized just how important Caitlin Clark is. This is a fantastic piece of audio.
I want to personally thank Caitlin Clark for lifting up our sport. She carried a heavy load for our sport, and it just is not going to stop here on the collegiate tour. But when she is the number one pick in the WNBA draft, she's gonna lift that league up.
That's awesome, man.
It sounded like Dawn told everybody to hush.
I think I heard that too.
This is funny.
Hush.
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 I think she was trying to start a sentence with two different words. I do it all the time, right? One texter says, what was the more impressive dynasty of the 2010s? The Patriots, Golden State, or Alabama football? Great question. We'll get to that. Another texter, South Carolina not being considered a dynasty yet is due to women's BB basketball fans. And then here's one I want to get to. A texter says 90, 111, 90, 70, all winning streaks from Gino. Coach Staley is on her way, but Gino is the GOAT of GOATs.
I don't think you don't have to be more impressive than the dynasty before you to even be considered a dynasty. I mean, Gino is by far the GOAT of women's college basketball. I mean,
so
him and Pat.
Yeah, sure.
Those two together. I mean, is anyone saying that Dawn Staley has achieved what Gino Auriemma already has? No.
But I'll say this, Diesel, like I agree with you. But, man, I could make an argument that Dawn Staley has had more of an impact on the game. Like, I'm not saying she's more of a GOAT than Gino, because I like Gino. I think Gino's a great coach, and we got to get that moving screen controversy as well.
I don't think Gino's going to be in the game for much more than about 5 more years.
He may not be. But I just think that the overall impact that Dawn Staley's had, like everybody is tweeting about Dawn Staley. You go on Twitter last night. You name it celebrity. Insert celebrity's name here. Insert former president's name here. Everyone loves Dawn Staley.
Gino's 70, by the way.
He is 70 years old?
70.
Man, I didn't realize he was 70.
Like
No, he doesn't, does he?
Rick Pitino's 71.
Looks
Pitino
90.
looks like he's 90. Gino looks not a day over 60.
I agree. He does look young for his age. And now listen, again, I like Gino. Pat Summitt, a lot of people will tell you Pat Summitt's the GOAT, right? Pat Summitt's the one who put women's college basketball on the map. A lot of people say that, and that's fair.
Gino could run.
Right.
Gino ran, and Dawn Staley's trying to keep up. She's trying to fly. There you go. There you go. That's the promo for the show.
That's right. Oh, good stuff. We appreciate you getting your thoughts in. 71307. The text line just absolutely blowing up right now. Keep it up. We will get to those texts later on in the program. Phone line 844 fan phone for those that want to call in. G-Man Bills fan from South Carolina says it was actually 18.7 million viewers. Is that from last night?
So the way this is G-Man. I haven't seen the 18.7. What I saw 17.8 as the peak viewership. But somehow for some reason they calculate it as an average number of viewers. So they say the average number of viewers for that game last night was 14.2 million. So you could also argue, there was only 9 million people watching it because that was the low at some point.
So G-Man's doing the same thing Clemson does to calculate spring game totals.
Exactly. I think somebody's needs to get their eyes checked at Clemson. They got double vision.
Oh, man, that's rough. All right, coming up next, we will replay our interview with Erik Bakich, the head baseball coach at Clemson. Diesel and I spoke to him earlier in the program. If you missed it, we'll play that next. He's Diesel. I am Cole Bryson, and this is the Fan Upstate.
#1 real estate company in North and South Carolina for a reason, because they close sales. They helped over 16,000 people buy or sell a home in just 2023 alone. Visit AlanTate.com.
Lowe's knows pros need the right tools for every job. That's why they sell the largest in-store selection of Klein tools anywhere. Lowe's knows tools. Lowe's knows pros.
Hi, Discoverer. It's Jennifer Coolidge. I'm so glad I can talk to you 24/7. How can I help? I bought these yellow pleather pajamas, and I don't think I'm pulling them off.
Discover 24/7 U.S.-based customer service. Enjoy nonstop flights on Breeze Airways to 5 cities from ESP International Airport. Breeze Airways now offers nonstop
It is now time to talk a little college baseball. College baseball in the area, a lot of good teams, a lot of good competition in the state of South Carolina. And the team that is making the most headlines is Clemson baseball. We've talked a lot of Clemson baseball on this program, and it is our honor to be joined by Erik Bakich, head baseball coach of the Clemson Tigers. Coach, number one, we appreciate you joining us today and taking time for the program. I want to get started with the conversation of the sweep of Notre Dame, a very impressive weekend for your team. But I want to know, what were your thoughts? What were your feelings as you saw that 11-1 lead kind of dwindle and become a tie game in the ninth inning, Coach?
Well, hey, thanks for having me on, Cole. And yeah, I tried to erase that one from my memory already. So
sorry about that.
Appreciate you bringing it up. Yeah.
What good lesson does that provide, though, Coach?
Well, it's just, it was unfortunate. Obviously, nobody dialed it up that way. We had a 11-2 lead going into the eighth inning, thinking that, it was a good time to get a lot of guys in the game. And it just, I think Aiden Canuck had made things look so easy, which obviously it's not, because we had some close games the previous two. But, sometimes we've been on the other side of that now this year as well, where we face a really good pitcher. And then even though the bullpen arms are also good, they're not quite as good as what you saw from the starter. And that happened a few times at Florida State and Miami. And so they just started hitting some balls. And unfortunately, we were a little sloppy defensively. And before you know it, things unraveled quick. But, again, we've dealt with adversity all season long throughout the course of the games. We've had plenty of comebacks. We've had plenty of times where we've taken punches, and our guys, it was kind of one of those bend but don't break moments. And so unfortunately it's about as close you could get to breaking and giving up 4 in the 8th and 5 in the 9th. But we found a way to regather ourselves, refocus, get back up, dust off, and find a way to win the game.
He is Erik Bakich, head coach for Clemson baseball, number 2 in the country, 28-3 on the season right now. Coach, thanks for joining us here on Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. To win 28 games this point in the season, you have to be able to win in multiple ways. So tell me about kind of the makeup of this team and like what way are they most comfortable winning, and in what way do you think they're least comfortable winning? I'm talking about, being in a pitching duel, playing small ball, hitting home runs.
Well, the answer is probably whatever it takes in that particular game. And that's a good thing, because the one thing we aren't is one-dimensional. And we've shown the ability to win in different ways. And all the credit goes to the players. I mean, they're the ones that have to buy into being able to know how to bunt, and being able to base run, and being able to play fundamental defense and throw strikes and all the things that lead to winning baseball. And there's plenty of times to get your best swing off and try to hit homers too. But just the ability to be multidimensional and whatever the game calls for, because there's certain times where the wind is blowing in and the fly balls aren't flying. And you need to bunt and run and do other things. So we've been able to win in a multitude of ways, and it's really whatever the situation in the game called for. And it's credit to our players for finding whatever that was. But this is no time to pick our head up and look around and pat ourselves on the back. We haven't done anything yet. We're off to a nice start, but we've got, clearly, as we saw yesterday, we've got work to do and more growth to be had. And so we'll just stay locked in on that.
Hey, Coach, just for those in the area, because he is a local product, that are curious, when Tristan Smith, who's been battling an ankle injury for you guys, when he does get back to being ready, where does he fit into the rotation for you guys now that you had a few games without him? Obviously more than a few games, but also what do you expect from him when you get him back, one of your best arms?
Well, he's not only one of the best on our team, and not only one of the best in the ACC, he's one of the best in the country. So getting him back will be a huge boost to our rotation, to our team. We're looking forward to getting him back. We're hoping he gets back quick. Could be this weekend, could be the weekend after. But he is one of the best in the country, and he is having a great year. And so getting him back in action in the rotation on the weekend as a weekend starter will be critical. I don't know where that fits and when that will be, but it'll be soon, and having him back will be a huge lift for us.
Coach Erik Bakich, Clemson Tigers baseball. Coach, we spent the first hour of this show today talking about just how much of a star Caitlin Clark has been in women's college basketball this season. How do we make college baseball players stars in the same way?
Well, you're talking about the, best basketball player, arguably men's or women's, just statistically, and what she's done the last 2 years to elevate the Iowa program has been phenomenal. I mean, my wife and daughter aren't basketball fans, but they were watching the game, and we had the game on as well. And so I think when you have, and that's the beauty of sport, is somebody can elevate a program and capture the enthusiasm of a national audience. And it takes a special run like what the Iowa women's team has done. And we just saw it with our own Clemson basketball team. And obviously Dabo has a long history of doing that. And we as a baseball program need to get back to that where, you have a magical run, and then the storylines start to emerge of these individual athletes. And it's just a lot of fun, and people get behind it and start to get to know these players and learn about them. And it's just like everything then starts to really snowball from there. And so there's a lot of cool storylines that come out of team success, a lot of individual storylines that come out of team success. But it's all centered around team success.
Coach, talk about the impact that Blake Wright has had early in the season for you guys. Is that something you expected coming into the season? And then the second part of that question, how does a guy like Blake continue this success this tear that he's on right now? How does someone continue that high of a level of success all throughout the season?
The answer is yes. We saw that coming. I think last year was atypical for Blake. But this year he's just worked extremely hard. He's a two-time captain. He's a great leader. He pours into everybody else. He's a glue guy in the locker room. He has a relationship with everyone. So I think when he's up, there's a lot of guys pulling for him, and he's just the ultimate teammate. So you can see how he's thriving on a team that really values being great teammates. And that's just what he has to continue to do. He has to not only continue to put in the work himself, but where Blake really shines is he puts his arm around other guys and brings them with him and shows them the ropes and molds them into future leaders. And he's just a good dude, and he's a joy to be around. And, he's just, he's an easy guy to cheer for. And so I'm excited to continue to watch his success.
He's got his team number 2 in the country, Erik Bakich, baseball coach at Clemson. Can you go a little deeper on that, Coach? And can you tell us a little bit more about your team's personality? We don't see baseball players out on social media as much as other sports. So can you give me a sense of the team? Is it a goofy bunch? Are they a serious and focused bunch? Are they pranksters? Tell me a little bit more about the team.
Yeah, all of it. I mean, that's the thing. We've got a blend of a bunch of different personalities, and that's the cool thing about sports teams is you take all these personalities and all these backgrounds and guys from all different parts of the country and all different upbringings, and you mold it together into one group, one tight unit, pulling the rope in one direction. But the one quote of part of our shared language that always kind of comes back with this particular team is, how you do anything is how you do everything. And they have been very motivated, chip on shoulder type motivation since day one of wanting to be excellent and wanting to be elite, whether that's in the classroom, setting a new team GPA record, shattering a team GPA record, really, doing even more community service than we did last year. I mean, these are all things they did in the fall. And you say, well, what's that got to do with winning games? Well, it has everything to do with winning games, because how you do anything is how you do everything. So they're very just on task, self-motivated, disciplined. And so there's a carryover. And they're just a lot of fun to be around. Low maintenance, high production, great dudes. And, just kind of just chasing these celebratory moments, these Christmas morning moments, and just want them to have as special of a season as we can possibly have.
Coach, before we let you go, when you talk about this team, their MO, their identity, when you look at the national rankings, Clemson obviously finds themselves at the very top, or at close to the top, if you will. How do you not allow your team to get sucked into what the rankings say and keep their head down?
Well, our guys know they don't mean anything midseason. The final ranking is all that matters. And if we want to be ranked, let's be the number one ranked team at getting better. And that's what we talk about. Be the best at getting better. If we're going to be ranked in anything, let's be number one ranked at that. And so that's just kind of one thing we talk about week to week, is just that target on growth and improvement. Just keep getting better. Just keep your head down and keep improving. And the rankings will take care of themselves. So unfortunately, we don't spend too much time looking at and dissecting the rankings and in the week-to-week basis. We just know that if we keep getting better, and if we're the best team in the country at getting better, then everything will take care of itself.
He is Erik Bakich, head baseball coach at Clemson. Coach, I don't know if that quote comes from somewhere else, but I know that how you do anything is how you do everything as the villain's line from John Wick Chapter 4. Are you telling me that the team motto is the villain's line from John Wick Chapter 4?
I haven't seen John Wick Chapter 4, but sure, we'll take it.
Well, that's where I know it from. Coach, thank you so much, and continued success. I know that this team is going to keep winning, keep piling up the runs, and keep finding success. So good luck to you over the next couple of weeks.
Thanks so much, Coach.
Yeah. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me on.
I am Cole Bryson, and we together are Wire to Wire every single day from 3 to 7 p.m. If you just tuned in, maybe you just moved to the area and you heard this new show, or you've been under a rock for a few weeks. This is the newest show on the Fan Upstate. We appreciate you being a part of it. It is time now for the Daily Wires recap. Anything and everything that you want to get to, you, the TOLO, that stands for turn it on, leave it on. It's not P1, it's TOLO. And we appreciate all of the TOLOs on the stream. A ton of texts that have come in today as well. And it is time now for us to close this bad boy out, Diesel, the best segment. We save it for last, right? That's what they say. Save the best for last. That's what they say, at least. So we're going to try to do that today. A ton of Daily Wires to get to on a Monday, where the weekend literally wrote our show for us, right? It was very, very easy.
Actual work was done.
Sure. All right. So the Daily Wires for today. I love what the Atlanta Braves did over the weekend with the sweep of the Arizona Diamondbacks. That was very, very impressive to me. However, there is some bad news for the Atlanta Braves fans out there. Spencer Strider, I am scrolling. If you hear a scrolling through your microphone, it's me on Twitter trying to see if I have any new news regarding Spencer Strider. And I don't see any, Diesel, but we will continue to monitor that as he is undergoing some further inspection, if you will. Bad news for Braves fans.
Yep. After Friday's 6-5 win, the Braves came from behind. Spencer Strider, who had given up 5 runs through 4 innings of that game. He didn't complain about any soreness in his throwing elbow during the game, but after the game, he did complain about some soreness. He has undergone an MRI. He has undergone a physical inspection from a doctor in Austin, Texas. He is the guy that guys go to when they think they may need Tommy John surgery.
Sure. And that's not the best thing you want to hear.
Thing, no.
Don Staley and the Lady Gamecocks talking about living under a rock. We hope this is not new news to you. It's one of our Daily Wires, but they are once again national champions. They defeated Iowa 87-75 yesterday to claim their 3rd national title. Clemson baseball had a very impressive weekend. You just heard from Erik Bakich. They swept Notre Dame this past weekend 7-3 in game 1, 3-2 in game 2. And then yesterday, Diesel, Clemson's up 11-1. And we asked Erik Bakich, who was phenomenal, by the way. We asked him about this. First question out of the gate. You're up 11-1. Most of the time, you should win that game. And Clemson did win, but if you did not know this, that game turned into a tie game in the 9th inning. Not the best for Clemson to give up those many runs and allow Notre Dame to tie it. However, at the end of the day, Clemson did come out on top.
And Notre Dame is not a particularly great baseball team going into this weekend series. They were 14-10, so they're plus 500 baseball team, a decent baseball team, not great. 14-13 now that Clemson sent them packing all the way back to South Bend with their tails between their legs. It's tough to win series. And, we see it all the time when teams get hot down the stretch. You win games, you put up a lot of runs, and they made it interesting. The question is, why did that happen? And if you missed it, the replay about 20 minutes ago, you can go back and catch the very first question on the podcast that we asked that question of Erik Bakich.
What's interesting about Clemson and what they've done out of the gate this season is the fact that they have set themselves up for huge success because they have had a really good start. They didn't have the best strength of schedule, but going into the meat of the schedule, their RPI, they're going to be in very good shape when it comes to their RPI. They're definitely trending towards a tournament team. And if we get another month into this and Clemson is still ripping the cover off the baseball and still playing well, Clemson may be considered a early favorite for a regional host, which would be awesome. South Carolina, on the other hand, is trending down in terms of a regional host. They're just trying to keep the ship sailing in the right direction as they have
make a regional.
That's right. Really. They've lost 2 of 3 now to A&M over the weekend. They got tattooed by Georgia Southern in the midweek last week. So they've lost way too many games as of late. The score was 9-2 Friday, 6-3 on Saturday, A&M, and then South Carolina did win on Sunday, 6-5. But
South Carolina has dropped out of the top 25.
Oof.
They have the most votes, not in the top 25, so they're effectively ranked 26th.
Yep, they're definitely trending in the wrong direction. We'll see. You know, I know there's a lot of South Carolina fans out there who are ready for Kingston they're ready for the Kingston ship to sail, but I would say don't panic yet. Give it time and see if he can turn it around this season, because there is still a lot of baseball left. The Atlanta Braves 6-2 hosting 3-6 New York Mets tonight at 7:20. For those Braves fans wondering, Spencer Strider will not be there, obviously, so you won't be able to yell at Pete Alonso for him to throw it again. I know all Braves fans love Pete Alonso, right? And then lastly, Diesel, the biggest news of the day, arguably, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal. That's right, 5 years. To go where? Is he going somewhere really, really prestigious? Is he going to UConn? Where's he? NBA? Wait a minute. He's going to Arkansas.
He's going to replace the muscle man.
Here is Coach Cal today on his daily walk as he's walking his dog. And guess who goes and finds Coach Cal, Diesel? That's right, a reporter. During his daily walk, Cal's walking his dog. Here's what that sounded like. He is walking up to Coach Cal as we speak.
Hey, Coach, you got anything you want to say to your fans or anything? Anything right now? You want to say anything to your fans right now?
I'm good. Come on, Paul. Come on. My dog is walking me. Come on.
This is courtesy of WKYT. One more time.
Hey, Coach, you got anything you want to say to your fans or anything right now? You want to say anything to your fans right now?
I'm good. Come on.
There's nothing that Coach Cal wanted to say in the moment to his fans as he was trying to walk his dog today. Great job by that reporter to go and track him down on his dog walk. But Diesel, this to me is fascinating. And Trey, I see your message. I'll get to that. I'll come back to that. We could spend a whole segment on that. But Coach Cal being the new coach at Arkansas, that's one story. And then you have the other story, Diesel, of who does Kentucky now go get? Which to you is the more fascinating story?
Well, it's got to be Kentucky.
Sure.
I mean, as far as who does Kentucky go and hire going forward, there's a lot of really great up-and-coming coaches in the game right now who, on paper, wins and losses, they certainly have what it takes to be the next guy at Kentucky.
Sure.
The question is, are any of them prepared for the media bleep storm that is being the head coach at Kentucky? It is a big, big undertaking to want to take that on. And, it is a high stress environment. We talk about Mark Stoops being Mark Stoops at Kentucky football. It might be the best job in college athletics because you're overshadowed by Kentucky basketball. You just have to be okay. Like it's kind of like what it is at being the football coach at Duke. Just be okay, and you won't get fired because nobody really expects that much of you anyway.
JD asked if his lifetime contract was null and void. JD, the terms of that contract were that he could actually leave on his own at any time, which is interesting. And he did.
Well, almost all of these coaches leave on their own when they want to. It's just called breaking a contract.
That's right. And what's interesting is I agree with you, Diesel, that the more attractive story is the Kentucky job. I think that Coach Cal in Arkansas, sponsored by Tyson Chicken, he may take him to a few Sweet 16s and 1 or 2 Elite 8s, but I'm not expecting Coach Cal to go run shop at Arkansas. I'm really not. I just don't think you can recruit the same there. Yeah, money helps, and Tyson Chicken being the major player down there in terms of NIL, that helps too because they are huge. However, Kentucky basketball, Diesel, is one of the most prestigious, prominent blue bloods.
Yes.
And they have not been in the Final Four lately. Neither has Duke or North Carolina, but it's Kentucky's job. Like when you think of college basketball, you think Kentucky.
Yeah.
And
Kentucky,
they hadn't been
North
there.
Carolina, Duke, Kansas.
Sure.
That's college basketball over the last 40 years.
But there are a lot of options. And I do think that there are a lot of good candidates. However, like if I'm Kentucky, I would see the safest. And I know a lot of times you don't want to go safe hire, right? You want to go get the next Calipari. And I understand that. But I think the safe hire is Billy Donovan.
Sure.
He's been in the college game. He was really good at Florida. He also knows what it's like to coach in the NBA. He's probably not the happiest of guys in Chicago. I mean, they're fighting for a play-in game. They don't have a ton of talent on that roster in Chicago. So he probably would leave. Wouldn't you think? Would you leave Chicago for Kentucky?
Yes, if you're interested in getting back into the recruiting game and the NIL
Sure,
game.
good point.
You know, we've talked about in football the way we've seen coaches at smaller schools. Sean Elliott, great example. It was a Kane Womack at South Alabama did the same thing.
Sure.
Left to go be assistants at bigger schools. So the question is, like, do they want that? Do they want to have to deal with that anymore?
Well, you know what? It's a headache. You're right.
It's a completely different game than it was when Billy Donovan was coaching at Florida.
But you know what? Like, I hear you, but man, part of me thinks that he would be great in the new era of college basketball.
He would have such a unique perspective and an ability to connect with players that want to be in the NBA. He's like, I just came from the NBA. I just came from the Chicago Bulls.
Here's the problem, though: the money. I mean, so right now in the NBA and the Chicago Bulls, Billy Donovan, in 2020, Diesel, he signed a 4-year contract with the Chicago Bulls worth $24 million. So you divide that. He made $30 million, by the way, to coach the Thunder in the 5 years he was the Oklahoma coach. So he's making 24 over 4 years with Chicago. So he's made
6 a year.
That's right. You're right. 24 total. And then he's made now 54 total in the NBA. So the guy don't need money.
No.
But if you're making 24 million and you want me to come coach college and have a headache for I don't even know what Cal's salary, I have to look it up. It's significantly less, obviously, being in college basketball. But man, oh man, I don't know.
$8.5 million a year. So Kentucky can pay it. Here's a really interesting piece of audio I wanted to get to before we left out.
Sure.
Talking about NIL, talking about the transfer portal. This is great audio from Deion Sanders talking to his team at Colorado about a note that he received about some of his players from a Colorado professor. Listen to this.
Let's check this out. This semester has been extremely challenging for me as a professor. To distract the students, to not bring anything to the table. You just got to eat. You got nothing to the table. Knives, forks, and spoons. I often have to repeat the same 3 and 4 times because student athletes are present but not really in class. You present, but you ain't really there. You on the field, but you ain't doing nothing. You in a relationship, but you ain't got no love. You at the mall, but you ain't got no money. Got a lot of ability, but no darn talent. Because you don't think. This is from the teacher. Now, what bothers me severely is all the guys that we're about to see. Where's Corey? You here? Let me know if they have a draft grade. Let's roll. It's missed way over 3 classes, so his final grade will drop.
He's talking about all these players who don't have draft grades, who think they can do whatever the flip they want to do at Colorado. They're there in class just so that they don't get booted from class, but they're not actually doing anything. Isn't it interesting how open and, like, to use these terms, liberal Deion Sanders seems when it comes to embracing NIL and the transfer portal? However, when he starts talking to his players, he sounds like a conservative-minded old coach.
And I love that.
Isn't he the best at playing both sides of this thing?
Well, you got to be. And I love that audio. Like, that is what more teams need.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, man. Great stuff.
He got what he wanted, though. I mean, he got the team, the transfer-heavy team
Sure.
that he wanted. This has been episode 11
Wow.
of Wire to Wire with Diesel and Cole Bryson. It's been a blast. We'll be back tomorrow for number 12.
Let's go.
JD, Trey, all of you guys, thanks for being here for the entire show. Thank you much. We will see you guys tomorrow right here on the stream. Bye, guys.
You're going to Wire